Chapter 4368. That's right. With a light sweep of her eyebrows and a light application of lipstick, she didn't need any makeup. The female soldier in the mirror had bright eyes and white teeth. Her eyebrows were like the distant mountains. Her eyes were like the stars. Her lips were red and her teeth were white. She wore a knee-length military skirt that she kept at the bottom of her suitcase, then put on a brand-new pair of mid-heeled leather shoes. The student's short-sleeved shirt was tucked into the skirt, making Sue stare. Even Jing, who didn't pay much attention to beauty, couldn't help but gasp in amazement. The fact that Yi Jian was good-looking was a well-known fact in the military academy. The young cadets would also talk about who was good-looking and who was good-looking in private. Generally, they would have different aesthetic points and would say a few words of disapproval. But as long as Yi Jian was mentioned, there would be no objections. It was publicly acknowledged that even wearing a military training camouflage uniform couldn't hide her beauty. Now, with light makeup, Yi Jian in the female soldier's uniform was even more beautiful than the slender lotus flowers. She had the unique valiance of a female soldier. When Yi Jian walked out of the dormitory, she had already attracted countless gazes. In the end, she took the risk of being caught by the pickets and lowered her general's cap to cover her face. In the dormitory, He Jing said to Su-won, "Luckily, we're in a military academy. Luckily, we don't like to waste time with makeup. Luckily, our little Jane Eyre is someone who pays attention to inner beauty. Luckily, she's already taken. Otherwise, who knows how many boys will be charmed by her. I'm a girl, but my heart is still thumping. I'm charmed by her." Yi Jian never wore light makeup, not even lipstick. This was her first appearance with light makeup, and she stunned her roommate. "I'm thinking, how many boys will be charmed by Yi Jian when she goes out now?" Su-won put away the lipstick that she hadn't used many times. She only kept it for emergencies and said to He Jing, "Little Jane Eyre's boyfriend really hit the jackpot. Luckily, he's handsome enough. Otherwise, I'd really have to persuade Jane Eyre to have a change of heart." Lieutenant Colonel Xia had always been confident in his looks. Back in the day, he knew that it was this face that had first attracted the attention of Yi Jian. Hearing this, He Jing nodded seriously. That's right, it was the truth. Luckily, Jane Eyre's boyfriend was handsome enough. Otherwise, she would have persuaded Jane Eyre to have a change of heart. Su-won said, "Comparisons are odious." Then he went back to his desk and continued to do the exercises. He couldn't think too much about it. Thinking too much would really upset him. Yi Jian, who had attracted a lot of attention along the way, finally returned to the group. This time, there were a total of 12 foreign exchange students, so the school also sent out 12 outstanding students to receive them. There were 10 male students and 2 female students. The other female student was someone Yi Jian knew. She was Ding Ling, who had gone with him to study in a grassroots company in the Nongguang military region during the winter break. She had gone back to the dormitory to put on makeup and had yet to return to the team. The 10 male students who came in with Yi Jian were still memorizing the personal information of the 12 foreign exchange students. They had to familiarize themselves with their interests, hobbies, and taboos. Yi Jian, the instructor, just called and asked you to. A male student who was the first to see Yi Jian said. As he spoke, the word "stunning" flashed across his eyes. He wanted to look at Yi Jian, but didn't dare to. His voice gradually lowered as he said, "She asked you to call the instructor when you come back." When the male student spoke, the other 8 male students all looked up. They all knew why the female students went back to the dormitory. Teenage love. Putting aside their identities as military students, they were also normal boys and had feelings that normal boys would have. Yi Jian, who had put on light makeup, stood in front of them. When they saw the light makeup, their eyes lit up and they felt that she was stunning. Chapter 4369. The cadets who were able to represent the military academy in receiving cadets from other countries were all the cream of the crop within the academy. Although they were stunned by Yi Jian, they did not lose their composure. They were only stunned for a moment, and very soon, they retracted their gazes in embarrassment. They then pretended to clear their throats and calm down. It was a little rushed, but they were still steady. Yi quickly called the instructor back. It turned out that the instructor heard political commissar Yu say in the car, "You want Yi to put on makeup? Will she listen?" Then, the instructor immediately called again to ask. Hearing this, Yi was more than helpless. "You've already given the order. How can I not obey? It's done. It's really done. I feel really awkward right now. I really want to go to the bathroom to wash up." Her complaint, which she was not used to, made the instructor not know whether to laugh or cry. "You little comrade, didn't you say that everyone loves beauty? It's rare for a little girl to dress herself up. Why do you feel like she's going to the execution ground? We still have 30 minutes to reach the academy. You guys hurry up and get ready. Don't embarrass the academy." "Yes." Yi stood at attention and replied. Although the instructor could not see it through the phone, Yi was used to it. The male students adjusted their breathing and waited for Ding Ling, who had also put on light makeup, to come over. They were no longer as stunned as when they first saw Yi. They even gracefully complimented her with words like "very beautiful." Ding Ling looked at Yi and smiled. "Comrades, there's something wrong with your sense of beauty. You call this beautiful? Yi is the one who's beautiful. Even a girl like me can see light in front of my eyes. My heart is pounding like a little deer. Didn't you guys notice? Or are you all shy?" In the military academy, girls also had to become boys. Sometimes, there really was not so much awkwardness. The male students who were hit by Ding Ling's words did not bother to hide anymore. Their sneaky glances became open and honest. They all looked at Yi and laughed. The atmosphere instantly became relaxed. There was no longer any tension like before when Ding Ling came over. This time, there were students from 2 countries who came to the University of Science and Technology of China for the exchange. Both countries had diplomatic relations with China. Similarly, Chinese military academy students were going to the other countries' military academies for the exchange. The students from the 2 countries were all from Africa. They were all tall and strong, and their exposed muscles were like rocks. They all looked like strength-type students. When Yi saw the 2 male students from Monfei, her eyes narrowed slightly. She knew these 2 male students. They had represented Monfei in the military academy tournament, and so had she. Although the male students from the 2 countries had dark skin and generally looked the same, Yi could still recognize the 2 male students from Monfei at a glance. In the past, these 2 male students had been rude to the Chinese school participating in the competition. Now that they had returned to Chinese territory and had even entered a Chinese military academy, he did not know if the 2 of them would continue to be rude or if they would lower their heads to reality and become humble. However, it wasn't long before it was proven that human nature was just like a dog that couldn't change its habit of eating shit. The root of the inferiority had already taken root in the bones and blood, and it was impossible to change it. Yi recognized the 2 of them, but the other party clearly did not recognize Yi. When they shook hands, their arrogance flowed out involuntarily. The Chinese male student who was in charge of giving instructions took the initiative to extend his hand. The other party lowered his eyes at a 45-degree angle and glanced at the Chinese student's outstretched hand. A hint of disdain appeared on his glowing, dark face. Chapter 4370. In the end, they did reach out their hands, but they didn't even touch the Chinese student's hand. They made a fake handshake and immediately retracted their hands. When the Chinese student saw this, his smile didn't change. He nodded slightly, and after showing that they were guests, he added the 2 to the list of people to watch. Monfei was a country with tribal divisions and a strict hierarchy. These 2 arrogant male students came from Monfei's upper-class society, which was at the top of the hierarchy. The reason why they were arrogant was because they thought they were superior to others in the hierarchy. It was impossible for them to do as the Romans did. As a result, their arrogance became the fuse for them to be taught a lesson in the future. Of course, they wouldn't be beaten, but they would be taught well. The student in charge of receiving them didn't get angry because of this. On the contrary, he was still polite and didn't lose the demeanor of a large country soldier. Since the other party ignored them, there was no need for them to stick close to them. As a person, especially as a soldier, one had to have a backbone. Yi Qian shook hands with the two female students. After a while, he was able to chat freely. The two female students from Monfei walked in the middle, while Yi Qian and Dingling walked on the left and right. They smiled and politely accompanied them the whole time. As for the instructor's request for her and Dingling to put on light makeup, Yi Qian still couldn't understand it. The two female students from Monfei didn't put on any makeup. Why did they need them to put on light makeup? They didn't tour the campus immediately. Instead, they went to the reception room first to complete all the relevant procedures for the 12 people. Then, they were brought to the international dormitory to settle down. After a short rest in the dormitory, they were brought to the meeting room. The meeting room was the first step for the 12 exchange students to understand the University of Science and Technology. Monfei students who were sent overseas for exchange were all outstanding students. From their speech and behavior, it was obvious that their family status wasn't low. The two arrogant male students from Monfei always asked targeted questions, but they were always blocked by the male student in charge of receiving them. Probably because they couldn't stump the Chinese student, the two of them finally shut up. When they visited the University of Science and Technology, the two of them started to show off their superiority. The other 4 students from Monfei were probably used to it. Although they had received higher education, they still had a hierarchy in their bones. They didn't raise any objections to the two's rudeness. On the other hand, the 6 students from Great Africa were very humble. They had a learning attitude when interacting with the Chinese students. When they entered the large computer room, the eyes of the 6 students from Sadoya were almost glued to the glass. The leading male student politely asked the student from the National University of Science and Technology who had been serving him, "Can we use them in the future?" Sadoya, Libya's neighbor, had just ended its civil war not long ago. The flames of war had stopped, and what followed was a long period of reconstruction. The 6 students from Saidu came to China with a devout attitude, hoping to bring what they had learned back to China and contribute their strength to rebuild their home. There was no way to answer the question of whether they could use the mainframe computer. The senior brother from the 4th year smiled and said, "There will be a class arrangement. If there's a class arrangement, then it will definitely be used. Every laboratory is used in conjunction with the curriculum. You can't enter and leave as you please." Man Fei and the other 4 students were also very happy to interact with the Chinese students. They asked a lot of questions about the University of Science and Technology of China. Yi Qian and the others would choose to answer these questions and not answer everything they asked. When it came to sensitive questions, they would politely choose to avoid them and change the topic. Chapter 4371. After visiting 2 laboratories and an exhibition room, the group arrived at the library. The spacious and bright library was not empty at all. Almost every seat was occupied by students, all seriously flipping through the books in their hands. Whenever they encountered a problem they did not understand, they would quietly discuss it with each other. From time to time, they would write and draw in their notebooks. Every student had a lively and serious expression on their faces, storing more knowledge for themselves. When the Sadoya students walked into the library, they could feel the atmosphere of reading. Their eyes all revealed envy. Their country had been destroyed so badly that having a library was now a dream for them. Without a library, they did not have a complete home. Everywhere was broken concrete. In their capital, there was not even a complete building to be found. Stepping into this peaceful land of China, the tall buildings, the rows of trees, the Chinese citizens riding bicycles on the side of the road, the drivers driving on the road. This land was the country they dreamed of, the country they wanted to build. There was no war, no killing, no destruction, no nightmares. They came with hope and would return with seeds. The library became the closest place for the 12 students to stop. The Sadoya students even took out a few books to read. They knew a little Chinese, but it was far from enough to understand Chinese. "This is our city's construction plan. This is our country's international metropolis, high city, and this is our country's fastest developing city." Yi Qian used his native English to answer the 2 Sadoya students' questions. A city construction plan book, accompanied by each city's landmark buildings, took half an hour to explain. Monfei's 4 students also participated, chatting happily with the Chinese students. The 2 arrogant students were already very impatient. Before they came, they had some understanding of the Chinese military academy. Regarding this, they felt that it could not be compared to the United States military academy at West Point. They wanted to go to West Point. Unfortunately, Lady Luck did not patronize them. Another group of students went to West Point, and they could only come here. Yi Qian and the others entertained the 12 students the whole morning, and it was only after lunch was over that they finished. Chatting with people was a technical job for Yi Qian, especially when he had to entertain the 2 arrogant and nitpicking Monfei students. It was simply a psychological challenge. Fortunately, the challenge was successful, and there was no impulse. As for whether there would be impulse in the following days of exchange, Yi Qian was not sure. There were many exchange students from other countries in the National Science University every year. Similarly, there were always some things happening every year. Soon, it was mid-June. Yi Qian, who had lost contact with her boyfriend, walked out of the laboratory and rushed to the classroom. It was morning, and she had to go back to the classroom after working all night in the laboratory. As for physical fitness, the instructor had already taken measures to let Yi Jian do whatever he wanted because he knew that Yi Jian would never let his physical fitness training fall behind. Every test result was the best proof. Yi. Song Jiqiu, who was approaching, said with a smile, "After the morning class, we need to send 4 people to train outside the school. The instructor directly sent your name, the 2 of us, and Wu Bingxian. The instructor said that if we catch you, we should inform him directly. He won't notify us separately." Yi Jian's brows furrowed at the words training from outside the school. Chapter 4372. On the day of training, Yi Qian would be a 4th-year student. It was normal for 4th-year students to train. It was okay to train freshmen in the military school, but to go to other schools? Yi Qian was a little reluctant. Before she could say anything, a group of people rushed out of the teaching building across the street. They were all in a hurry, but they were in a stable formation. It seemed that they were rushing to do something important. The instructor said that you can talk to him alone if you have any ideas. However, the list has been fixed and can't be changed. It's the same whether you train on campus or outside. You'll be on the list, Hu Huan said with a smile. He seemed to see Yi Qian's reluctance. So, you'd better accept it. We're the ones who train outside the school. We're envied by the ones who train inside the school. Why would they be envied? Because they could go to other schools to see beautiful girls. Yi Qian knew what they were thinking. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a smile, "Okay, I'll ask if anyone in the class is willing to change with me. I'm happy to do it." She would rather train inside the school than outside the school. She didn't need to look at beautiful girls or handsome guys. The school's training made it easier for the freshmen to realize that they were no longer students, but soldiers. She was happy to train the freshmen to change from students to soldiers. However, it was difficult to train outside the school. It was not good to be too strict or too lax. She needed to know the limits. It would be more troublesome if she met boys who were naughty. If she could not change it, she would ask to train girls. They'll be happy to change. But what's the use of that? As Liu Yang spoke, 3 physical fitness instructors walked out of the teaching building across the street. They looked a little gloomy. Liu Yang said, "What's wrong?" "It's a little tense in the morning." "When it's not tense, let's go to class." Song Jiqiu glanced at them and took the lead to walk up the stairs. She whispered to Yi Qian, who was walking with her, "Excellent students also need some experience. I think the instructor made this arrangement on purpose. It's good for your graduation next year. After the training tomorrow, it will be the group training. Just listen to the instructor's arrangements. You can't go wrong." Yi Qian chuckled as he walked up the stairs. "Yes, I know. The main thing is that I find off-campus training troublesome and hard to manage. But it's different if I'm strict. They can only obey. I only need to be strict within the normal range. Even if the freshmen have objections, they can go to the instructors and teachers. They won't find me. Song Jiqiu understood what he meant. It was not that he was unwilling to train her, but that he found it troublesome. When you're outside, you'll still train according to the requirements. Even if you have any complaints, you won't be found. The instructor will come forward to deal with it. Relax, it's good to visit other universities. We're all looking forward to that day. They talked in low voices as they walked to the classroom. All the classes in the morning were the main classes. After the class, they moved to the multimedia class. They analyzed and discussed various battles. After the discussion, they built relevant data. The whole morning passed like this. It was not until noon that Yi Qian knew why the students in the opposite building walked in a hurry. The 3 physical fitness instructors looked gloomy. 2 students from Monfei provoked the students in his class. Meanwhile, they belittled his class one by one and spoke arrogant words. As a result, they aroused public anger. Are they here to exchange information or to make enemies? Students from foreign armies will more or less have some conflicts in the early stage when they come here. But they've never made such a big noise like the 2 of them. Maybe they don't want to stay here and want to pack up and leave as soon as possible. Chapter 43-73. During the break after lunch, Yi Qian and the others chose a shady spot to discuss some of the problems from the morning class. Then, they talked about the Monfei students who had come to the National University of Science and Technology. Yi Qian didn't know yet, but when he heard this, 2 familiar faces flashed through his mind. One's called Boost Something, and the other's called Cartwright, Briles Cartwright. Yi Qian, who was drawing an attack-based diagram, with He Jing, said their names without looking up. It was quite long and a little hard to remember. Suan nodded. That's right. It's these 2. I heard that they belong to the upper echelons of the Monfei hierarchy. They even point fingers at the Monfei students who came with them. They're very arrogant. They even chose these kinds of students. Aren't they afraid of making enemies back home? She even rolled her eyes after saying that. Yi Qian picked up his book and pretended to pat her. Mind your image. It's a mistake. Pretend it didn't happen. Suan smiled and avoided it. She continued. We'll see how good they are this afternoon. They've participated in the International Military Academy student competition. They probably have some real skills, so they're arrogant. Yi Qian participated too. Student Wei Jiaming looked at Yi Qian. Did you all forget that Yi Qian represented our military academy and is senior from his senior year at Monfei? The air was silent for a few seconds. Suan picked up her textbook and slapped her forehead. Yeah, our class Jane Eyre participated too. I didn't even remember. She turned to look at Yi Qian and said with some disappointment, You're too low-key. It's easy to forget. You need to be a little more high-profile sometimes, you know. You think I'm like you? Everyone knows about your little achievements. He Jing put down her pen. She had finally finished drawing an attack-based diagram. She joined the conversation and handed the draft to Yi Qian. Take a look. I'll talk too. Yi Qian took the sketch and laughed. What's there to talk about? They came here to provoke us, so they can only suffer. Depending on the severity of the situation, if it's light, I'll warn and criticize them. If it's bad, I'll contact Monfei directly. I won't let them continue to cause trouble. After she finished speaking, several students in the class nodded in agreement, and she continued to talk about the 2 of them. Compared to the students from Sadoya, the students from Sadoya were much more humble. Yi Qian did not join in. With a pencil in her hand, she began to draw out the attack points on the basic attack surface, and then set up a defense and attack plan. They were commanders, so these were things they had to learn. Now was the theory, but in the future, it would be the practice. They didn't chat for too long. Yi Qian finished perfecting the basic attack diagram, and then drew a combat diagram. Everyone immediately dropped the unrelated topic and threw themselves into the sea of knowledge. Yi Qian had been on the battlefield before and had a certain amount of practical experience. As such, every time he discussed this topic, it was easy for him to stir up the students' emotions, and he was able to solve the related problems in many ways. They were commanders, and their main task was to command on the battlefield. If they did not have any theoretical knowledge, their 4 years in the military academy would have been a waste. Physical fitness was the most important, but knowledge was also very important. The few of them who used their lunch break to finish up the problems they had left behind in class dispersed half an hour before the afternoon physical training. They each returned to their dorms to change into their training uniforms. Yi Qian, Su Wan, and He Jing walked to the meeting point. It was not time yet, and the students who had arrived earlier were discussing something. When it was Yi Qian's turn, they pulled her along to discuss the topic they had been talking about. Chapter 43-74. 8 minutes before the assembly time, Yi Qian heard the students in the class mention Monfei. He raised his eyes slightly and listened attentively. In the third year of the military academy, the two students from Monfei created a new hot topic. There were more than 1 or 2 exchange students from other countries in the military academy. There were more exchange students from several countries in Dayo than the 2 students from Monfei, who had been here for less than a month. In the morning, 2 students from Monfei challenged the students from 2 classes on purpose. Just now, the drill master came to inform us that the physical fitness training in the afternoon will be postponed and that we will go to watch the competition first. Several male students who had arrived first conveyed the drill master's order. They all rubbed their fists and showed great interest in it. If they did not fight back when they were challenged in front of their own home, those who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth would not be able to distinguish between north and south. He couldn't afford to lose, and he couldn't afford to lose the battle array either. In the army, even if it was a tug of war, they could not lose. What they lost was not people but face. If they lost face, how could they not feel embarrassed? It was the same in the army and in the military academy. When the assembly time came, the team leader finished organizing the team and went to the sports field in neat steps. Before they arrived at the training field, the physical fitness drill master had already walked toward Yi Qian's class with big strides. Yi Qian's class was the last of the 4 classes. The drill master did not wait for them to walk over. Instead, he walked faster when he saw the students. Yi Qian, Song Jiqiu, stepped forward. Yes, yes. With the drill master's loud and vigorous voice, Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu walked away with a serious look on their faces. When they walked out, there were 2 empty seats. The students behind them filled the empty seats in turn. The 2 walked out and stood in front of the drill master, stood at attention, and saluted. After the salute, they finished. There is a temporary friendly match. You 2 get ready. There are 6 students from Monfei and 6 from Sadoya. The drill master went straight to Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu. He had just learned from the instructor that the 2 exchange students from Monfei, who had been quite vocal recently, had participated in the International Military Academy competition. The drill master immediately thought of Yi Qian. According to the original arrangement, Yi Qian had not been involved. There was no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. After participating in the International Military Academy tournament, things were different. He had to be cautious. 2 people from Monfei's side have participated in the International Military Academy student tournament. No wonder they're so arrogant. When you're on the stage, make your move. Don't be overcautious. The instructor will say a few words on stage. You 2 just need to listen. When it's time to make a move, make a move. The instructor looked at Yi Qian and said these words. What he meant was for Yi Qian not to show any mercy and to crush him directly. The instructor was a native of Xiang City. From time to time, he would speak a few sentences of Xiang City dialect, which did not affect Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu's understanding. They both knew what he meant. From a moment Yi Qian saw the 2 of them, he knew that the days ahead would not be simple. A year-long exchange? Very good. Not even a month had passed, and he was already famous. Participating in a national grand tournament doesn't mean you're strong, but it's good to be cautious. Yi Qian laughed and said, I met the 2 of them in the martial art competition. At that time, their strength was average. There was nothing special about them. But after such a long time, maybe their strength has increased tremendously. They're no longer the same as before. We can only know if their strength has increased tremendously after the competition. Let them see the real strength of the students who have also participated in the International Military Academy tournament. The instructor's words were too meaningful. The two students who would participate in the friendly match later could not help but squint their eyes slightly. Chapter 4375. As for the instructors, they were ruthless on the training ground, but when they were off the training ground, their level of speech was the complete opposite of the ruthlessness on the training ground. Their speech was both artistic and professional. One could carefully analyze what they said, and one could even pick out a trace of abnormality. Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu exchanged a look of understanding and followed the instructor to the sports ground. The content of the friendly competition was very simple. There were 3 subjects: the 5,000-meter run, the 400-meter obstacle course, and the precision shooting. As for the sit-ups, there were none. With these 3 compulsory subjects, the good ones and the bad ones could be seen at a glance. The physical training of the 4 classes was temporarily put aside. They gathered together and sat outside under the sun. First, the instructor went on the stage to say a few words. Hearing this, Su Wen muttered, "Friendship first, competition second. Who are you kidding? There must be a winner and a loser in the competition. There must be a winner and a loser. It's so shameful to lose. Tut tut tut. The official language is so nice. I'm just not sure if those 2 guys can understand it. Let's compete directly and wait for them to lose. The letter of challenge has been sent to our door. We can't kill them. Well, we can't kill them." After hearing this, Yi Qian wanted to laugh. However, as the leader, he had to be serious. When the leader is speaking, you should speak from below. Or do you want to go up? When it came to discipline, Yi Qian criticized seriously even though they were in the same dormitory. After the competition, run 3,000 meters. Su Wen was speechless. She flaunted her strong words for a while, but the disaster unexpectedly fell from the sky. How sad, how sad, how sad. With Yi Qian's criticism, even if Su Wen kept nagging, she could not care less about the rules. She could only blame herself for being too talkative and not being able to hold her tongue. There were 6 students from each country. The University of Science and Technology of the PRC also sent 6 students. The 2 students from their class were challenged. The 2 students from a neighboring class were challenged, and Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu were also in a group of 6. After they stood up, Yi Jian and Song Jiqiu walked to the middle of the room and stood in a team with the other 4 students. Although the 6 of them were from different classes, they would usually hold small competitions to encourage themselves. Therefore, they could be considered acquaintances. It was just that they did not know each other's names. Of course, except for Yi Qian, they all knew her. The 6 of them nodded slightly as a form of greeting. They stood on the far left, with Monfei's 6 students in the middle and Sedoya's students on the far right. The group of 18 people had their heads under the scorching sun and their feet on the grass as they waited for the competition to begin. The rules said 5,000. 18 people ran at the same time. They were divided into the first, second, and third places. The 400-meter obstacle course was a relay obstacle course. That was to say, one had to run a round trip. The team with the shortest relay time would win. Precision shooting consisted of 10 bullets for fixed-point shooting, 20 bullets for forward shooting, and 20 bullets for 30 meters away from the target. All 20 bullets had to be fired. If there were no bullets left, all the scores would be nullified. The winner would be determined based on the total score of each team. These were all the most basic competitions, and there was no increase in difficulty at all. The 2 Monfei students who had been incessantly stirring up trouble couldn't take it anymore. After the instructor finished explaining the rules of the competition, he raised his voice and said a bunch of things, meaning that they all understood. It was just that they didn't know if the Chinese and Sedoya students understood. The 6 students from Sedoya all frowned at the same time. Their dissatisfaction with the 2 students from Monfei had reached its peak. They didn't want to compete with the students from their class, nor did they want to compete with the students from Monfei. The instructor looked at the 2 Monfei students who were talking and glanced to one side slightly. A student who was holding a digital video recorder had recorded everything in the video. Chapter 4376. The arrogance of Man Fei and the other 2 students who ignored the rules and did not respect the instructors made the expressions of a student from the National University of Science and Technology who were watching the friendly match turn cold. Their gazes were cold. This kind of people needed to be taught a lesson. After a few lessons, they would know how high the sky was and how deep the earth was. Sue adjusted her breathing and clenched her fists tightly. She had been in the army for almost 3 years, and this was the first time she had the urge to hit someone. Calm down, calm down. There was still 3,000 meters to go. It was not worth it to add another 3,000 meters for this bastard. She had to calm down. Under the scorching sun, the sweat that flowed out, evaporated, and flowed again. The back of the uniform was soaked with wavy white sweat stains. Due to the arrogance of Man Fei and the other 2 students, no matter how hot the sun was, it did not melt the ice in the eyes of the other students. They all stared at the field, waiting for a beating. Yi Qian had entered the field. Victory was already in the bag. Looking at the other students who had entered the field, they were all the top students in their respective classes. Even the students in their own classes would not have an easy time against them, not to mention those 2 arrogant guys. The instructor with a strong physique walked to Yi Qian and whispered, "Instructor, you're just being polite. Remember what I said just now. You have to fight when you have to, and you have to fight beautifully. Let them be proud. It's necessary to let them be so proud that they forget themselves. The louder they sing, the harder they fall. Based on your experience of beating us once, you should know how to compete." Yi Qian, who was nodding from time to time, did not know whether to laugh or cry at the instructor's last sentence. "Instructor, when did I beat you guys to the point that I have experience?" It was the instructors who challenged me first. I had no choice but to accept the challenge. Oh my, are you pretending to be innocent after getting an advantage? Last time when the instructors held a meeting, the head instructor directly called out our instructors and said that we were embarrassing ourselves. Since the beginning of the 2nd semester, we have been losing to the female instructor, Yi Qian. I still have a 3,000-word self-reflection report to write. Don't you think I'm wrong? Yi Qian, who had crushed all the instructors in the academy in terms of physical fitness, nodded and answered very seriously, "Indeed. 3,000 words of self-reflection fell from the sky. Wasn't this injustice?" "Yes, Disha. I'll be straightforward. If you guys fail to win, you have to write a 3,000-word self-reflection report with me. We'll go through thick and thin together and fulfill the relationship between the instructor and the students." Xiang City's local instructors' Mandarin and local dialect flew together. Yi Qian very solemnly said, "May the instructor be at ease. I guarantee that I will complete the task. 3,000 words of self-reflection will be completed by you alone." "All right, I'll wait for you to finish." It didn't matter if she didn't share the same fate as the instructor. When she met the top students, whatever she said was right. Seeing that the competition was about to start, the instructor hurriedly reminded her, "Remember, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Okay, play well. Friendship comes first. Friendship comes first. Don't hurt our relationship." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the DV camera was aimed at the 6 students of the National University of Science and Technology. The words that rushed to the tip of his tongue after the word "okay" were abruptly swallowed back by the instructor. It was replaced with "play well. Friendship comes first. Friendship comes first. Don't hurt our relationship. Remember the words, the higher you climb, the harder you fall." As for the last sentence that suddenly raised his voice and said "play well. Friendship comes first. Friendship comes first. Don't hurt our relationship." That was said for the DV camera to hear. Yi Qian understood everything. Friendship comes first. Competition comes first. Mutual encouragement. Peaceful coexistence. Remember. Chapter 43-77. The instructor nodded heavily and said, "Good." A good student was indeed a good student. Look at how smart he was. He immediately knew what to say. The recorded video had to be submitted so that the leaders watching the video would know that the students of the National University of Science and Technology were tolerant of the student from other countries who came to the school for an exchange. The other party was arrogant, but the students of the National University of Science and Technology just laughed it off. Magnanimous. Who told you to be stubborn and spout nonsense? Fine, don't take it to heart. Say what you want. After all, it's freedom of speech. We won't care about your crazy words, but when it's time to win, we can't just give in because we're magnanimous. The warm-up 5 kilometers race was about to begin. The 18 students stood on the track without any sprinters run up. After warming up for 3 minutes, with a bang from the whistle, the 18 figures sprinted forward like arrows. The Monfay students and Sedoya students who came from Africa were talented in running. They were good at sports with explosive power, such as the 100-meter sprint or the 300-meter sprint. However, the 5,000-meter sprint was not just about explosive power, but also endurance. 5 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometer sprints, 5 kilometer sprints. There is not a day that the National University of Science and Technology students did not have. 5 kilometer sprints in a single week, 5 kilometer sprints in 2 weeks, 20 kilometer sprints in a single month, and 20 kilometer sprints in 2 months. There were 12 months in a year, 360 days in a year. There were sprints every month and every day. The 5 kilometer sprints were just an appetizer. The students from the United States and Africa countries had explosive power. They sprinted 100 meters in an instant. Their speed was not just for show. They were quite fast. The students who were observing could only see the shadows of dozens of legs. They were like monkeys in the sky. The students from the United States and Africa sprinted like they were sprints. The 6th third-year students from a National University of Science and Technology did not directly sprint. After the first lap, the 6 students from a National University of Science and Technology were all lagging behind the Monfay and Sedoya students. The Monfay student, Briers, ran first, followed by Cartwright. After 1 lap, they deliberately turned their heads to look. When they saw that the 6 students from a National University of Science and Technology were lagging behind the military academy students from their 2 countries, their nostrils flared up in pride. See, these are the Chinese military academy students. Why didn't they like to come to China's military schools for exchange? It was because the military schools of this country couldn't beat them at all. Browse, my good brother, it depends on today whether we can get back to West Point. Come, Bryles, let us defeat all these weak students and show them our strength, Cartwright said excitedly. It was as if he could already see victory and knew that they would definitely win. Ha ha, of course we'll win. We'll win beautifully. We'll make all the students here remember my name from now on. Come on, man, beat them. Bryles, who was laughing loudly, stretched out his hands in a gesture of victory. His Achilles tendons were taut, and the muscles in his arms and legs produced even greater contractions. Every time he ran, it was as if his heels did not touch the ground. He led the entire way. Cartwright also laughed out loud. That's right, they would defeat these weak Chinese students. The only one they truly admired was the United States Military Academy at West Point. That world-class military academy with countless outstanding students was the military academy they wanted to go to. Chapter 4378. They should go to the most powerful country and the most powerful military school for the exchange, instead of running to a Chinese military school that they could easily defeat. They had had enough of the life here. Even breathing the air made them feel quite uncomfortable. Yes, it was uncomfortable. It was torture for them to stay here for 1 more minute. Come on, Chinese students. Don't make us look down on you. Ha ha ha. Bryles threw his arms and shouted loudly. The temporary lead encouraged his arrogance. His insufferably arrogant attitude made the Chinese students who were watching sneer again and again. Be arrogant. Be arrogant to your heart's content. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. The more arrogant you are now, the more miserable you will be later. The entire field was 1,000 meters. 5 laps were exactly 5,000 meters. In the first lap, the 6 Chinese students fell behind. 3 of the 6 Sedoya students overtook the 2 Monfay students. Now, the 1st and 2nd place were Monfay students, the 3rd and 4th were Sedoya students, the 5th, 6th, and 7th were Monfay students, the 8th was Sedoya, the 9th was Monfay, and the 10th, 11th, and 12th were Sedoya students. Yi Qian, who was breathing evenly, maintained the initial speed. She led the 5 students to finish the first lap. When they finished the second lap, Yi Qian said in a low voice, "Speed up evenly. First, overtake the Sedoya students. In the fourth lap, overtake the Monfei students. In the fifth lap, all of you speed up and overtake the Monfei students who are currently in first and second place." The 5 students nodded together to show that they understood. When the 6 of them were talking, they happened to pass by Yi Qian's class. Su Wen, who was sitting in the front and observing, did not hear what Yi Qian said, but she saw the 5 students nod together. When they nodded, Su Wen knew that the highlight was about to begin. She whispered to He Jing, "Blink less. The highlight is about to begin. If you blink too much, you may miss the highlight." Because Song Jiqiu and the other 4 nodded, He Jing also saw it. Her eyes fell on the students of her school who started to speed up. She nodded thoughtfully. The highlight is about to begin. The magic anchor is out. All the pawns step aside. Yi Qian's nickname was the Magic Anchor. The 6 National University of Science and Technology students increased their speed one by one. At 1,500 meters, they overtook the Sedoya students. They maintained their speed and did not use too much force. On the second lap, Yi Qian's team overtook the Monfei students. At this moment, Briles and Cartwright were at least 100 meters ahead. At the end of the third round, the 2 of them looked back with relaxed expressions. Good, excellent. They really liked their current ranking. Although the weak Chinese students had overtaken several other students, so what? Ha ha ha, they are still in the lead in first and second place. Briles was now quite certain that he had won, and to better humiliate Yi Qian and the others, he whistled and retreated until Cartwright overtook him. Well done, Briles. Cartwright whistled, praising Briles for his arrogance. Look, even if they run backwards, the Chinese students can't catch up. 2 more laps. We're definitely going to win. Briles, who deliberately retreated, said confidently, "I'm looking forward to seeing the highlight on the faces of the Chinese students. It will be quite interesting." On the fourth lap, Briles and Cartwright, who had finished their communication, withdrew their gazes complacently. The moment they withdrew their gazes, Yi Qian made a gesture of forward. Seeing her gesture, the students of the National University of Science and Technology laughed. The students of the National University of Science and Technology began to be spirited. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Chapter 43-79. This was the home ground of the University of Science and Technology of China, not the home ground of the 2 students from Monfei. You can do whatever you want. You can enjoy the process, but the final result is not up to you. Seeing this, Su Wen said to He Jing, "I'll go over and say something to the instructor." "What do you want to say?" "Don't go. Keep an eye on them. You're the only one moving." He Jing subconsciously stopped her and grabbed Su Wen's wrist. "Just watch. Don't run around." Yi Qian began to overtake them at lightning speed. Under her lead, the other 5 students sprinted at the same time. After 4 laps, it was the turn of the students from the University of Science and Technology of China to compete. "I just have a suggestion. Nothing else." Su Wen glanced at the tilted scales of the competition and said in a low voice, "The instructor is right in front. I'll go over and say something." He Jing looked at the instructor's position and let go of her hand. She whispered, "Don't make a fuss later. Just clap." The instructor said that friendship comes first, competition comes second. "Understood, understood. Then I'll go over first." Su Wen bent over and slowly moved to the instructor's side. She said in a low voice, "Sir, our school is a little merciful to them. This is a competition, and they're only running a normal race. It's hard to tell how strong they are. A 5 kilometers race like this was no different from a normal race. They were being merciful because the other party was an exchange student. If it was a competition, the 5 kilometers race would have to be extra. The 5 kilometers or 3 kilometers race in a competition was very different from the normal training. The competition was always a 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers battle run. Tactic 1. If you encounter a poison area during the attack, you have to wear a gas mask and pass through quickly. Tactic 2. If the ammunition truck breaks down, you have to move the ammunition manually. No dragging or collision during the movement. Tactic 3. If one person is seriously injured during the attack, you have to move immediately. You have to move the injured person by carrying, hugging, carrying, or lifting. Tactic 4. If you encounter obstacles during the attack, you have to find a way to pass through them. Usually, it was a high bar and a low bar. You have to use a high drill and a low stride to pass through quickly. Tactic 5. If you encounter enemy bunkers on both sides of the road, you have to use grenades to suppress them. Everyone can hit one. This was the 3,000-meter or 5,000-meter battle run in the National University of Science and Technology. This was also what Suwon meant by running in battle. The instructor smiled and looked at the female student who was usually full of ideas and quick on the uptake. He smiled and said, "They can't even beat us in running. That's enough for them. You can't even win such a simple match, and you still have the face to say that you're strong, and you still have the face to be arrogant?" Suwon immediately understood the meaning behind the instructor's words. He chuckled and said, "Instructor is wise. Instructor is wise. Let's teach them a lesson so that they won't think too highly of themselves in the future. All right, stop flattering me in front of me. The year-end physical fitness exam is around the corner. You better hurry up and train. Flattery is useless. Do you understand? Go back to the team. Don't think too much." The instructor knows what to do. Although he was smart, he was usually a little unreliable. In view of Suwon's experience in his freshman year, the instructor decided to give him a warning in advance. Suwon was depressed. She was really just giving her advice. How was that flattering? Jing was amused. "You deserve it. I told you not to run around, but you didn't listen. Now you know. Who told you to have a criminal record? If I were the instructor, I would think the same." Chapter 4380. The atmosphere on the track became increasingly tense as Yi Qian led the team to overtake them. The 6 Sedoya students were completely left in the dust by the National University of Science and Technology. After 4.5 laps, 3 Monfei students had been overtaken by the National University of Science and Technology. The 4,500 meters were over, and only the last 500 meters were left. When Briles and Cartwright turned around to look, the relaxed look on their faces disappeared completely. What was going on? Why were the Chinese students catching up? They had even overtaken the 3 Monfei students. "Briles, they're catching up. We need to speed up. Otherwise, they'll catch up. Damn it, we can't let them catch up." Cartwright only glanced back once before not daring to look again. He was getting a little anxious. He thought that the Chinese students would keep falling behind. He didn't expect them to sprint in the last lap, and with such vigor. He really thought that all of them would beat the 6 Chinese students, but the results suddenly changed. They might even overtake him and Briles. If the Chinese students won. No, he couldn't think about it. That would be a race so terrible that he didn't want to remember it forever. The smile on Cartwright's face was completely gone. He couldn't face it with a smile anymore. Briles curled his lips in disdain. How could he be defeated by the Chinese students? There were only 500 meters left. It was his turn to sprint. Without speaking to Cartwright again, Briles also started sprinting. The atmosphere on the track was tense, and it was the same outside. 500 meters. The last 500 meters. 400 meters. There were only 400 meters left. After Yi Qian, Song Jiqiu, and the other 2 students overtook Cartwright, they chased after Briles. 300 meters. The 6 Chinese students had all overtaken Cartwright, whose facial muscles were trembling. They were getting closer and closer to Briles. Yi Qian, whose breathing was slightly hurried, stared at the running figure in front of him. She was sprinting with all her might for the last 200 meters. The distance was getting smaller and smaller, and she was about to overtake them. In physical training, 9 out of 10 sentences from the instructor during physical training would be about explosive power. The 100-meter sprint was the best event to show explosive power. Yi Qian, who had run 4,800 meters, treated the last 200 meters and the last 100 meters as the 100-meter sprint. A military sports professor once said, "A soldier who is not good in the 100-meter dash is not qualified to be a soldier, and a soldier who is not strong enough is also not qualified to be a soldier. Uncle Jin and Uncle Chun had once said something similar. Yi Qian, who had been trained as a sniper, had terrifying explosive power. Although the students from Africa and North America had an innate advantage, Yi Qian had made up for it by defeating the innate advantage that the black man had. The wind was like a knife, sharp and powerful. It was like a wall that could not be seen, but could be felt as it rapidly pushed forward from behind. Briles, who was still 100 meters away from the 5,000-meter mark, felt the might of the wall. It only took a few seconds for his confidence to crumble. The transparent and pressurizing wall was getting closer and closer to him. Finally, it brushed past his ear, and a shadow that was much shorter than him overtook him. With Yi Qian as their target, the 5 students behind him launched their final sprint. Song Jiqiu surpassed him in second place. She approached him with an imposing manner that was as oppressive as a mountain, which made the expression on Brile's face stiffer and stiffer. When there was a first, there would be a second, and when there was a second, there would be a third. After the 5,000-meter dash, Yi Qian, who had finished his sprint, slowed down his pace until he was walking slowly. Song Jiqiu and another male student followed him closely to finish their sprint. Chapter 4381. First, second, and third were the winners of the National Science University. Fourth was Briles, whose expression was completely stiff, while Cartwright had only just finished his sprint. The afternoon sun was as hot as an oven. The students sitting on the floor were all sweating profusely, their cheeks flushed red. Their eyes were fixed on the arena, so bright that it was as if the sun was shining on them. They were not roasted by the sun, and all of them were full of energy. Win beautifully. Waves of applause rang out. There were no shouts, no boos, only orderly applause that reflected the strict discipline of our army. The applause did not last for long. After 3, 3, 3, the waves of applause disappeared. In the arena, Cartwright and Briles from Monfey stood together. Their arrogance was gone, only a strong sense of unwillingness to accept defeat. Now, the two of them were in a bad mood, so bad that they did not want to talk to anyone, including the Monfey students. The Sedoya students had already shaken hands with Yi Qian and the others. Being of the same skin color and from the same land, the Sedoya students were who knew how much more humble than the Monfey students. They were the first to offer their congratulations. The other 4 Monfey students were a step behind, mainly because they went to comfort Briles and Cartwright first. However, the two did not appreciate it at all, using their eyes to signal the students who wanted to comfort them to back off. They did not need the comfort of these fellows from poor families. We just haven't gotten used to their competition. Next, we will definitely win. Cartwright clenched his fists, biting his thick lips. The whites of his eyes, which were reflected by his black skin, were especially white. His slightly bulging eyes looked especially ferocious because he was speaking so forcefully. They should have won. They should have won against the Chinese students. They had lost just like that. They were very unwilling, completely unable to accept it. We've participated in the International Military Academy tournament. We were ranked 6th. These Chinese students can't possibly win against you and me. He pointed even harder at his chest, completely unable to accept the result of the competition. We should have won. They can't possibly win against you and me. Shut up. Briles glared fiercely at Cartwright, who was talking nonstop. He could not accept it either, but the result of the competition was his loss. He had lost. Damn it. He had not thought that he would lose. Cartwright, whose chest was still heaving up and down, shut up. Without his interference, Briles took a deep breath and pointed at Yi Qian. Look at that Chinese student. Do you see anything? Have we seen her before? Oh, the Chinese female student. Have we seen her before? I think I've seen her somewhere before. Briles took deep breaths. His eyes locked on Yi Qian. His mind was searching for where he had seen her. He was certain that he had seen her somewhere before. Briles, Cartwright, and Cartwright, Briles. Cartwright twisted and relaxed his ankle on the spot. He stared at the Chinese students who were talking to the Monfei and Sedoya students with a dark gaze. No, no, we've seen this woman in other places. Think about it carefully. You must have seen her before. You and I have seen her before. And Bryles. The only time we've met a Chinese student together was once, and that was during the International Military Academy tournament. Chapter 4382. Yes. He remembered. The International Military Academy tournament. That was right. He had seen her there. Bryles' gaze became even gloomier. His thick, black lips were pressed tightly together, and even his voice became gloomy. The Chinese student defeated us in that match. Now, we're competing against a student who once defeated us. Do you think we'll win? Wait, Bryles. Why are you so sure it's her? Sorry, I'm not doubting you. It's just that I don't have any impression of her. Was she in the Chinese team at the tournament? Cartwright realized that he had no impression of her at all. After thinking about it, he still had no impression. Asian facial features were all the same. He had no way of deepening his memory. It's her. I'm very sure it's her. There's no mistake. Next, we need to think carefully about how to beat her. We need to think carefully. Bryles was very sure. He had heard the Japanese students privately discussing each of the Chinese students. They had especially mentioned a female student. Later, the Monfei students had lost to the Chinese students. He had specifically asked the Japanese students which Chinese female student was better. He remembered correctly. It was her. Bryles' certainty made Cartwright's mood even worse. There was no time for them to think about how to beat the Chinese students. The second round of the 400-meter obstacle course was about to begin. The whistles sounded, and the 18 people gathered. The 400-meter obstacle course was the most important part of the basic military training. It tested a soldier's physical fitness and willpower. At the same time, it was also the most difficult and dangerous course. There were 8 sets of obstacles and 18 obstacles in the entire course. This basic military skill was not unique to the Chinese. Other countries also had it, but the training content was different. Now, Bryles regretted it. He regretted that when the Chinese instructor had asked him if he had any objections to the course, he had shook his head and said no. He had no objections. Now, he had objections because there was a student in the Chinese team who had participated in the tournament and won against the Monfei students. There was no use in regretting it. He could not ask for that female student to be replaced. Go, Yi Qian. Kill them. Don't hold back. Yi Qian walked past the students in her class. She heard a few voices quietly cheering for her. Friendship came first. How could she shout to kill the other party? She had to be civilized, polite, and not embarrass them. She nodded and smiled, indicating that she would do her best. He had already been stepped on in the face by the other party, so how could he let him step on him? The 400-meter obstacle course in the National University of Science and Technology was not considered too difficult. For example, the 400-meter obstacle course that Yi Qian had trained in was designed for the Special Forces. The difficulty and danger factor increased exponentially. Therefore, every time there was an in-school 400-meter training session, Yi Qian would always take the lead, leaving the students behind him in the dust. The 400-meter obstacle required soldiers to be able to run, jump, climb, maintain their balance, and climb. Not only did they have to have explosive power, but they also had to have endurance, coordination, and sensitivity. Now that it was a relay race, the athletes were required to run faster in order to increase the total time of the whole team. The Monfei and Sedoya students, who had been here for almost a month, had all done the 400-meter obstacle course. They also had similar training in their own countries. The 3 groups of contestants stood in line, and the instructor whistled. Yi Qian was not the first to attack. She was the last to attack. Chapter 4383. The whistle for the competition between the 3 countries sounded. The 100-meter dash was completed in an instant. This was the beginning and the easiest step in the entire 400-meter obstacle course. The Chinese team finished the 100-meter dash slightly behind the Chinese team. As the gap between the 3 kingdoms' students widened, the atmosphere in the arena reached its climax. 3 students had already passed, and Monfei's student was currently 2 obstacles behind the Chinese student. Sedoya's student, because the second student had to try 3 times before passing, immediately widened the gap and was now 4 obstacles behind the Chinese student and 6 obstacles behind Monfei. The 400-meter obstacle course consisted of a 100-meter dash, bypassing the flag, crossing the 5-step pile, crossing the trench, flying over the low wall, passing the high board platform, passing the ladder, crossing the single plank bridge, climbing over the high wall, drilling and climbing the low pile net, bypassing the flag and turning back, going through the low pile net, climbing over the high wall, bypassing the lower column of the single plank bridge, passing the ladder, passing the high board platform, drilling through the hole in the low wall, jumping down and climbing the trench, crossing the 5-step pile net, turning around the flag, and running to the finish line. This was the 400-meter obstacle course in the National Science University as well as in the Army. The Snowfield Brigade and the Storm Commandos increased the difficulty of the original 400-meter obstacle course. For example, when they jumped over the low wall, they had to grab something on the low wall. When they passed the high board platform, they had to take out their guns and shoot. Another example was that when they drilled and climbed the low pile net, there were flames on it. It could be said that the difficulty of each obstacle course had been increased, which was far more difficult than the 400-meter obstacle course in the National Science University. This was one of the differences between the training of the Special Forces and that of the general troops. The 4 classes of the National Science University who were watching the competition were not nervous because they were 2 obstacles behind. They would catch up with them. They would try their best to catch up with them. The 3rd relay was completed. The students who had been 2 obstacles behind were only 9 seconds behind the Monfei team. Song Jiqiu took over the relay. When they reached the ladder, Song Jiqiu was parallel with the Monfei team. When they reached the high board wall, Song Jiqiu was in the lead. In the 5th relay, the Chinese team took the 1st place and was 3 obstacles ahead of the Monfei team. Cartwright, the Monfei team member, had finished the relay. Seeing the Chinese team overtake them again, his teeth, which were extraordinarily white because of his black skin, almost broke. Briles was the 6th. He had been the 1st, but when he saw that Yi Qian was the last and wanted to compete with Yi Qian, he immediately applied to change the order. The instructor and drill master agreed to his request, so he was the last one from the 1st. At this moment, only the 6th relay had not started. Cartwright, who was standing next to him, gritted his teeth and said to him, "Anthem may not be able to overtake the Chinese team. Briles, you are our hope to defeat the Chinese team." They wanted to win. They really, really wanted to win. Only by defeating the Chinese students could they leave this terrible place and go to the West Point school that they yearned for the most. Song Jiqiu climbed over the barbed wire. She crawled forward. Her sweat dripped on the dusty ground inside the barbed wire. She climbed out with her face mottled with sweat and dust all over her body. The 5th relay came back. It was Yi Qian's turn. Briles provoked Yi Qian silently through the Sedoya team member. He was tall. As long as he lifted his chin and looked down, he showed an expression of disdain. Briles' hostility was so deep that Yi Qian could hardly ignore him. Chapter 43-84. Yi Qian, who had been exposed to the sun and was wearing a training cap, had sweat all over her face. Even her eyebrows were wet with sweat. She gave him a faint but contemptuous look. Since Briles came to the school for the exchange, apart from his arrogance, the students of the National University of Science and Technology had followed the principle of visitors are guests and should be treated with courtesy. They did not make a fuss about him. Every time he provoked them, they ignored him or smiled. As a result, Briles became even more arrogant and thought that the students of the National University of Science and Technology were weak and easy to bully. He, who was used to being treated with courtesy, was suddenly provoked by Yi Qian. His first reaction was disbelief. He could not believe that he would be provoked by a student of the National University of Science and Technology here. Briles exploded in an instant. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He declared war on Yi Qian in such a way. "Come on, let's fight. What is there to be afraid of? Song Jiqiu, who had returned, was getting closer and closer to Yi Qian. Finally, she returned to the starting point. Yi Qian glanced at Briles coldly. Her figure was like a whirlwind. She finished the 100-meter dash in an instant and bypassed the signal flag at the fastest speed. The 100-meter dash was just the beginning. The real difficulty was the 200-meter and 300-meter dash in the middle. From the 200-meter dash, the 5-step pile was activated. The students had to step steadily and keep their center of gravity. This was the first time that the students had trained for the 400-meter dash. The instructor would point out that the students must remember their steps in order to pursue speed. Once they did not step steadily, they might sprain their ankles. It was the first time that the new students had completed the 400-meter obstacle course. Many of them had sprained their ankles to the size of an egg. It was so painful that their comrades had to carry them to the infirmary to bandage their ankles. One jump, one jump. 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 One step, one step. 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 Yi Qian did not know how many 5-step piles she had run since junior high school. The 400-meter obstacle course with no difficulty was not difficult for her. When Yi Jian was a freshman, it was the first time that the freshmen had completed the 400-meter obstacle course. Some of them were injured, and some of them fell down. They were in their prime, but after the 400-meter obstacle course, they all became old, weak, and disabled. She started training 5 years earlier than the other students. She had been training with the soldiers when she was still in the army deep in the mountains of Shuku village. After a long time, she didn't feel that as a freshman completing the 400-meter obstacle course for the first time in one go, she would attract a lot of attention. She didn't realize it, but the instructor had his eyes on her from then on. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Everything that had happened during his freshman year was still vivid in his mind, as if it had just happened yesterday. The students from Monfei and Sadoya were also quite strong. To be able to become exchange students and come to other countries' military schools for exchange, their military skills were quite strong and would not be bad. It was still difficult for the students from a National University of Science and Technology to win in every subject. This was also the reason why the instructor looked for Yi Qian at the last minute. If he lost, it wouldn't just be a loss of face. After leaping over the 5-step pile, the deep pit within 200 meters was waiting for him. There were 2 ways to pass through the pit. 1. Jump into the pit. Jump straight over. 2. Jump into the pit. Jump down and climb back up. This friendly competition was the second way to jump into the pit. If the entire 400-meter obstacle course was divided into 5 stars based on its difficulty, then jumping into the pit would be divided into 3 stars. Chapter 4385. The pit was made up of walls with a length, width, and depth of 2 meters each. The walls of the pit were vertical, and there were no cushions inside. Jumping down would require one to climb out of the 2-meter-high wall. Students Monfei and Seidu had both suffered in the deep pit. Yi Qian did not even blink as she jumped down the 2-meter-high deep pit. Then, as if her legs were equipped with springs, she jumped out of the pit with a whoosh. The entire tactical maneuver was so brilliant that the instructors took the lead in applauding. Her movements were handsome, nimble, and full of bravery and sharpness. All the students present felt their blood boil. So cool. So satisfying. Briles had only just started his 100-meter dash. Yi Qian jumped out of the deep pit with a whoosh and rushed towards the short wall. The short wall was 2 meters wide, 1 meter tall, and 20 centimeters thick. The hole was 50 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters high. The bottom edge was 60 centimeters from the ground. This was a wall, and she needed to jump over it in one go. Yi Qian used the explosive force from jumping out of the deep pit to shoot out like a small stone from a slingshot. Before the instructors could catch their breath, she had already reached the short wall. She supported herself with one hand on the short wall and jumped up with one foot. At this moment, all the weight of her body was on her right hand, which was supporting the short wall. She used the momentum to jump forward. On the field, the slender and fearless figure in camouflage was like an eagle spreading its wings. Her tactical maneuver was smooth, and she used her instantaneous strength to jump over the short wall. Good! Thunderous applause sounded. This was the 400-meter obstacle at the teacher level. Even the instructors had to admit that they had fallen behind Yi Qian. The teacher-level movements and the teacher-level speed were so brilliant that people could not help but want to applaud her. Suan clapped so hard that her palms burned with pain, but it did not matter. She did not feel any pain at all. She was proud. He Jing also clapped until her palms hurt. She, who had always been steady, turned to Suan, who was constantly applauding, and said, "So cool, so cool. If I were a guy, I would definitely chase her. I must chase after her." Stop dreaming. It's not your turn to chase after her. If I were a man, I would have done it long ago. That guy got lucky. Even if he's handsome, he's not as handsome as our little Jane Eyre. Suan clapped his hands and said with shining eyes. The cheap guy was none other than Lieutenant Colonel Xia Jinyuan, who was training a group of soldiers in a base far away. Yi Qian's tactical maneuvers pushed the entire competition to the climax. Every student's blood was boiling, and all their emotions were affected by Yi Qian. They cheered and applauded for her. The instructor turned around and looked at the students who were applauding beside him. He smiled and said to the instructor beside him, "You're so strong. We're China's young people. We have no borders with our country." Facing the hot-blooded young students and the future officers of the army, the instructor thought of Mr. Liang's young China talk. "Beautiful, my young China, not old with the heavens. Strong, my China youth, no border with the country. With their hot-bloodedness, their fearlessness, and their passion, my China youth, no border with the country." The instructor, who did not even blink, stared at the vigorous and slender figure on the field and replied to the instructor, "After Yi Qian today, how many more Yi Qian will there be? How many more of today's scenery will there be? Can we see it all the time and pass it down from generation to generation?" Chapter 4386. The applause behind her was endless. The scorching sun did not make the students cower. It was like a flame that ignited the hot blood in their hearts, recklessly burning their youth and sweat. At that moment, their applause was for Yi Qian. The fire in their eyes was even more intense because of Yi Qian. Listening to the applause and looking at the valiant female students on the field, the instructor smiled brightly. Wave after wave, there will definitely be more rising stars. The power of a role model does not only affect the generation. Yi Qian's 4 years in school will directly affect her cohort, as well as the next 3 cohort. And the next 3 cohort can influence the next generation. This is our China's youth, boundless with the country. The instructor's reply made the instructor laugh. That's right, today's scene and today's emotions will definitely be seen frequently in the future. The difficulty rating was 5 stars. The 1.8 m high, 2 m long, and 50 centimeters wide high board platform was getting closer and closer to Yi Qian. With the high board in front and the low board behind, Yi Qian's arms and legs were filled with strength. She kicked off the ground with one leg, and the moment she jumped, she grabbed onto the edge of the high board with both hands. Then, using the combined force of her legs and arms, she used her knees to push against the high board and held her breath as she flipped onto the high board. Her speed was simply too fast and steady, dazzling the spectating students. Just a second ago, they were still immersed in the spectacle of her leaping over the short wall, and before they could pull themselves out of it, she had already flipped onto the high platform and leaped onto the low platform. Holy *T. Brilliant! She clearly went easy on us in the past. The male students in the class were so excited that they accidentally revealed the fear they usually hid in school. After flipping over 2 low boards, and jumping off the last one. Yi Qian had already left Briles far behind. There was no need to say anything more about the Sedoya students. Go, Yi Qian, go, Yi Qian. Go, Yi Qian. Work harder to set a new record. You can definitely do it. Set a new record. Set a new record. Yi Qian, go. Good luck. No one knew who shouted first. But in an instant, every student watching the competition was infected. Not only that, but there were also students from the 4th and 1st year classes neatly lined up and ran over to watch the competition. One of the instructors who was in charge of the training happened to pass by and hurriedly ran over to gather the students who were training. This alerted the other classes. Thus, the student from the 4th and 5th year classes all came over. She came at the right time to see Yi Qian teaching the 400-meter steeplechase. Before they got close, they suddenly heard the 3rd year students shouting, "Go, Yi Qian!" Together with the 4th year and 1st year instructors, they shouted at the top of their lungs, "Maintain formation and speed up. Run!" Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sound of orderly and rhythmic footsteps could be heard as about 200 students ran over. Yi Jian reached the ladder with a difficulty rating of 4 stars. 15 steel pipes formed a horizontal ladder, each with a diameter of 3 to 4 centimeters and a height of 2.5 meters. Yi Qian, who ran to the front of the ladder, jumped up and grabbed the second bar with both hands. Using the momentum of his body, he quickly crossed his arms and moved forward. Seeing this, student Lu Yang couldn't help but gulp. He had stumbled on the scaling ladder in his freshman year. When he crossed his arms and moved forward, his whole body's coordination wasn't right, and he immediately dislocated his shoulder joint. For a while, he was afraid of the scaling ladder. Having been classmates for 3 years, he had never seen Yi Qian make a mistake during training. Chapter 43-87. Yi Qian had always been the leader of the class. As long as the students had any problems during training, she would be the first person they would look for. The instructors would always put her second. Every time this happened, the instructors would privately chat and say that it was the easiest to lead the commander-type Yi Qian's class. If there was a problem, they would look for Yi Qian, not the instructors. Her classmates had been worshipped by the students for 3 years. She was like the peak of a snowy mountain that could not be surpassed. Some of the male students refused to admit defeat. They felt that they were men. So how could they not be able to defeat the female students? The male students who refused to admit defeat secretly work hard. They even formed a small team with the goal of defeating Yi Qian. What was the result? Yes, the result was they were still defeated by Yi Qian. Moreover, Yi Qian never felt that she had been challenged by the male students or that she had been secretly competed against. She never realized it and continued to do her best to help the students in the class. Over time, the male students who refused to admit defeat were convinced from the inside out. They were convinced by Yi Qian's character and ability. They were convinced by Yi Qian's ability. How did Lu Yang know of such a small team? That was because he used to be a member of this small team. Looking at the valiant figure in the arena, then looking at the stopwatch in his hand, Lu Yang once again felt pity for his ignorance. Yi Qian was really not someone who could be casually challenged and defeated. She was usually at the top of the school's fitness pyramid, but when it came to the competition, she was so strong that it made people gulp in surprise. The freshmen and 4th year students were watching the competition. The applause outside the arena was even louder and more enthusiastic. The cheers were like a rolling tide, wave after wave without stopping. Go for it, Yi Qian. Go for it, Yi Qian. They were all shouting, "Go for it, Yi Qian." The instructor leading the team was afraid that Monfei and Sedoya would be upset, so he jokingly scolded, "Little brats, are you trying to pick a fight? Let's give Monfei and Sedoya a round of applause. Don't be stupid." While Lu Yang was still swallowing his saliva, he heard voices cheering for Monfei and Sedoya. Wu Bingxian, who was sitting with him, asked in a low voice, "How many seconds have passed? Can you break the record?" Lu Yang looked at the stopwatch and saw the time on it. He swallowed hard and whispered, "If I told you that Yi Qian will break the record and complete the 400-meter obstacle course, would you believe me?" "I do." How could he not believe it? I now believe that she can break the record. Wu Bingxian did not have the slightest bit of doubt as he answered in a very affirmative tone. Then she can break the record. Lu Yang nodded and answered seriously. Wu Bingxian, who had been watching the competition, laughed. I knew she would break the record. It's too low. He had no reason to doubt that Yi Qian could not break the record. This was because, while he and Lu Yang were talking, Yi Qian had crossed the single plank bridge and climbed over the high wall. His speed was so fast that it made his heart beat very, very fast. Low stance and agility were achieved through the low pile net skill. The 12 poles were arranged in 2 rows. Each row was 2 meters long, and the distance between them was 1 meter. The poles were 50 centimeters above the ground. Elastic materials were used between the poles to form a horizontal line to form the pile net. If all the subjects in the 400-meter obstacle course were divided into 5 stars, then the low pile net would be 2 stars. The 2-star low pile net was not difficult for Yi Qian at all. With a stride forward, she bent her knees and bent her waist. Her slender body swooped forward, her palms extended in front of her, and she used the force of her legs to enter the net. Chapter 4388. Good. Beautiful. The instructor cheered. Just this one move was so perfect that it could be made into a teaching video that could be played for all the students in class to watch. Yi Qian, who was in the middle of the race, did not hear how loud or enthusiastic the cheers were outside the field. Her eyes were only focused on each obstacle course that she had to pass. All her attention was focused on the race without a trace of distraction. The school's 400-meter obstacle course was not difficult for her. During the race, she would not be careless because of this. She would only give it her all so that Briles and Cartwright would not be able to raise their heads because of their arrogance and arrogance. They could leave, but they definitely would not leave with the attitude of looking down on the students of the National University of Science and Technology or the Chinese side. They could leave, but please tuck your tail between your legs. In the future, when you see the Chinese soldiers, you will not have the face to avoid them. I, a Chinese youth, have no border with the country. I, a Chinese soldier, am sacred and inviolable. Yi Qian, who was advancing, crossed her arms and legs and pushed forward together. She was more agile and faster than a rattlesnake swimming in the desert. When she was out of the net, she did not stop at all. She propped up her upper body with her arms and stood up in the blink of an eye. She quickly moved forward with her body covered in dust. At this moment, Yi Qian was covered in dust, especially her knees and elbows. Her face was even dirtier. She was sweating, and her sweat was stained with dust. She looked like she had just come back from scavenging. Who would stare at her face? Who would care about how dirty she was? No one. Those who stared could only see Yi Qian's agile figure. They could only see her great physical strength. They could only see that no one could match her every time she charged through an obstacle. They could only see her sharpness that no one dared to compete with. Yi Qian brought out a sharpness that was not usually seen in the school. She was like a general who had conquered a country on the battlefield. Her sharpness was on full display. She let the students see a side of her that they had never seen before. Once again, they cheered because of her. Their blood boiled because of her. Cartwright felt very dizzy and heavy. He began to lose his footing and began to panic. He could not stop the worry that spread throughout his body. Lose. It seemed like they might lose. It seemed like they might really lose. Briles was too far behind. The girl on the Chinese side circled around the flag and began to return, while Briles had not completed the obstacle course. Damn it, they would really lose. Cartwright became anxious as he looked around, his eyes darting around as though he wanted to do something. He had to do something because he didn't want to lose. What could he do? Cartwright was flustered and his thoughts were running wild. Briles, who was competing, was also a little flustered, especially when he saw Yi Qian return. In his panic, Briles made a major mistake. He didn't pass through the high wall in one go, and Yi Qian passed through in an instant. Right in front of him, Briles circled around the bottom pillar of the single plank bridge and continued his way back. At this point, The outcome of who won and who lost had already been decided. It was irreversible. Although the outcome was set, the instructors no longer paid attention to the outcome. Instead, they focused on whether Yi Qian could break the record set by a student surnamed Xia for the 9th cohort. Faster, faster. Very good, very good. Calm down, calm down. Don't panic, you must calm down. All right, cross the Haoyang Gully good. Quick, quick. It's not time yet, it's not time yet. All the spectating instructors no longer stood in their original spots. They didn't even realize that they had taken a few steps forward. All of their eyes were shining as they stared at Yi Qian, who was sweating profusely and fighting for glory. Chapter 4389. This was Yi Qian's moment. The faster she ran, the more attention she attracted. As for Browse's mistake, sorry, no one really paid attention to it. The dazzling white sunlight enveloped everyone, making it hard for them to open their eyes. However, when they saw the vigorous figure on the stage, they opened their eyes wide and widened their eyes. Everyone's gaze was focused on one person, and all the cheers were for her. At that moment, the field was boiling. At that moment, the passion was surging. She passed the high board diving platform, went through the hole in the low wall, flipped her legs, and jumped over the trench. All the obstacles in the 400-meter race were about to be completed. The 6th student of Sadoya knew he couldn't beat the Chinese student, although he tried his best to finish the race. The cheers on the field were so shocking that he was distracted for a few times. He couldn't help but look at the Chinese female student who was running very fast. She was so fast that every obstacle was like a flat ground for her. However, she was just running on the flat ground, which was not difficult at all. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that someone could run so fast, let alone a female student. Yi Qian didn't know how fast he was. He bypassed the flag turn and started the 100-meter sprint. Liu Yang stared at the stopwatch and then looked at the sprinting figure. He held his breath. Almost there, almost there, almost there. Come on, come on, come on. Yi Qian. After finishing the sprint, the applause and cheers outside the field were pushed to the highest level again. All the students stood up and applauded and cheered for the figure who brought them a visual feast. Yi Qian didn't look at the field until he finished the sprint. It seemed that he didn't know the field was boiling with excitement until now. Song Jiqiu and the other 4 students looked at Yi Qian, who had returned to the team, with shining eyes. Yi Qian, it's very likely that you will break a record. When she came closer, Song Jiqiu said in a low voice, the instructors and drill masters are so nervous that they are standing all the time. Hey, look, they're watching the time now. Yi Qian, whose back was wet, smiled and shook his head. It's impossible. Senior brother's record is not so easy to be broken. Not necessarily. Look at the instructors. They are very excited. A student from another class also whispered. He heard the conversation clearly and could not help but join in. The 2 of them believed that Yi Qian had broken the record, but they were very clear about the identity of the senior who had set the record and had yet to be broken by any other student. Because he knew, he calmly thought that it was impossible. It was impossible for Captain Xia to break the record he had set. He was now an undefeatable legend in the Snowfield Brigade. She was still a distance away from him. So how could she break his record? The other 3 students did not hear the conversation. They all smiled at Yi Qian. Good job, Yi Qian. Today he had completely crushed the 2 most arrogant students of Monfei. That Mr. Pride hasn't finished running yet. I can already see how dark his face is. I don't know if he has turned black, but I know that he has. The last student chuckled softly and signaled the other students to look at Cartwright, who had finished the race. Perhaps it was because Cartwright had been staring at Yi Qian, who was returning to the team, but he instantly caught the gaze of the Chinese student. Seeing this, he first withdrew his gaze in a rather flustered manner. Then, he realized that what he was doing was inappropriate, so he glared fiercely at Yi Qian. Chapter 4390. In the face of Cartwright's unconfident, fierce glare, The Chinese students in the competition simultaneously curled the corners of their lips and gave him a half-smile that was enough to make Cartwright go crazy from anger. Cartwright was so angry that his chest was about to explode. Back and forth. He looked even more guilty and unconfident. No matter how big his eyes were, there was only the appearance and not the aura. These Chinese students clearly didn't care about him at all. As for Yi Qian, she didn't even look at him. Instead, she walked towards the instructor who waved at her. Something seemed to have happened in the class, and there was some commotion. Several students stood beside the instructor and whispered to each other. The stopwatch in Liu Yang's hand was handed to the instructor. Several students stared at the numbers on it, and Liu Yang asked, "Instructor, you broke the record, right?" The instructor, who was holding the stopwatch tightly, glanced at Liu Yang. The instructor, who had always been stern and emotionless during training, also seemed a little excited at this moment. He asked, "Did you start counting from Yi Qian's start? Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I pressed the button when Yi Qian started. If I'm wrong, it's because I pressed it 1 or 2 seconds late," Liu Yang answered firmly. "I'm sure of it." The instructor took a deep breath before answering, "That's right, you broke it." Although she already knew the result, she was excited again when the instructor confirmed it again. If the instructor said that she broke the record, then she really broke it. She really did break it. The students easily accepted Yi Qian breaking the record because they felt that it was completely possible for Yi Qian to break the record. Instead, they were skeptical. "It really broke? Are you sure?" "I'm a little doubtful. That's not possible. How could I break Senior's record?" She doubted herself. Even though the stopwatch clearly recorded the time, she didn't immediately believe that she really broke the record. Breaking Captain Xia's school record was something she never even thought about. Yi Qian thought it was impossible. He thought that there was a huge gap between him and Xia Jinyuan, but he forgot that she broke Xia Jinyuan's record. Back then, Xia Jinyuan wasn't as good as he was now. In the past, Xia Jinyuan personally admitted that he wasn't as good as Yi Qian back then. Since that was the case, it was normal to break the record. Seeing this, the instructor was amused by her reaction. Breaking a record was a good thing for others, but why was she doubting herself again and again? "Do you not believe in your own strength?" the instructor asked. If it wasn't for the competition, he would really want to have a good chat with him. Why did he have so little confidence in himself? That wouldn't do. Yi Qian, with his head held high and his chest puffed out, shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not that I don't believe in my own abilities. I just don't believe that I can break the record." "That's more like it." The instructor waved his hand and said, "We'll talk about it later. Let's finish the rest of the competition first. That Monfei student is running back. You should return to the team first." At this moment, Yi Qian knew that he had really broken Xia Jinyuan's record. The corners of his mouth curled up as he answered with a crisp yes. He stood at attention, took a breather, turned around, and returned to the team. She thought I was lying to her. The instructor smiled and shook his head at the head instructor. He seemed helpless, but the smile on his face was very deep. It was just a facade of helplessness. The hierarch, who had yet to speak, said, "Give me a chance to speak later." "Thank you." In exchange, the instructor left with a smile. Yi Qian, who had turned around to return to the team, couldn't help but smile. She had actually broken Captain Xia's record. That feeling was really good. It was so good that she really wanted to call him and tell him. Chapter 4391. Xia Jinyuan's school record was broken by Yi Qian. Yi Qian's excitement was completely different from the other students. She felt good because she was much closer to him. Bryles finished his 100-meter dash. His face was dripping with sweat as he glared at the figure that humiliated him. He clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked. The instructor in charge of their class saw this, and his eyes turned cold and dark. Students like this shouldn't stay for long. They should finish the exchange earlier and return home. Cartwright gritted his teeth and whispered, "Damn it, they're all laughing at us for losing to the Chinese students. Bryles, we'll leave this rotten place, but we can't leave without losing." "We've already lost." Bryles didn't need to remind him. He had already thought of it, but they'd already lost. Damn it, they'd already lost. We have to win before we can leave. We can't become a joke in the eyes of the Chinese students. Cartwright told them the plan he had thought of. Delay our return until we win. The whistle sounded. Briles didn't have a chance to answer or consider. This time, the two of them didn't dare to do anything to show that they were special. Even the arrogance on their bodies was extinguished. In Su Wen's words, they had become cowards. Gather. The whistle sounded. The 18 students gathered in formation. The students were already quiet. Although they didn't say anything, their faces were filled with excitement. Especially the students in Yi Qian's class. They were so excited that they couldn't calm down for a long time. Su Wen was so excited that her face was flushed. She secretly pinched her arm to stop herself from screaming. She was too excited, too happy. Breaking the record. Calm down. Why does it look like you're the one who broke the record? Seeing her pinching her arm, He Jing couldn't stand it anymore and had to remind her. Look at how you're pinching yourself. When did you start to like self-harm? Happy, he. I'm really happy. Why go back home during the holidays? I can have a good chat at home about my best comrade. You're thinking too much. You won't have a chance to go back home during the holidays. His words woke her up. Su Wen noted that she would be demoted to the company this summer vacation. The last round of the precision shooting competition was about to begin. The 18 students headed to the competition venue to check their equipment. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but the Sedoya students, who were originally standing in the middle of the line, were now standing at the very edge of the field with the Monfei students in the middle. The Monfei students walked in a line in the middle with the Sedoya students on the left and the Chinese students on the right. Briles stared at Yi Qian with a gloomy look in his eyes as his cold voice drifted over. I know you guys are very happy right now, but don't think that you've won against US. There's still one more match. Just you wait. Yi Qian glanced at it out of the corner of his eye and found it beautiful. There's still one more match. You won, but you still lost to us in the end. Yi Qian replied casually. He didn't want to waste any more words. Just one sentence was enough. Behind him, Song Jiqiu pursed her lips and tried not to laugh out loud. Yi Qian had always spoken politely, but that didn't mean that he was harmless. He had found the wrong person to act arrogantly in front of her. Briles was so angry that his chest hurt, and his breathing became particularly rapid. His insulted pride didn't allow him to lose. He gritted his teeth and once again bumped into the muzzle of the gun. You, who participated in the International Military Academy competition, can beat us. But do you think they can beat us? Chapter 4392. He recognized me? Yi Qian raised his eyebrows slightly and tilted his head. He looked at him as if he was looking at a clown. I can defeat you and Cartwright. Isn't it okay? Stop struggling. You can't win against me, and you can't win against my comrades. The loser provokes the winner again and again. What do you want to say? Do you want to remind us that you are losers forever? Fuck you. Briles was completely angry and directly spat out the dirty words. His voice was not low, and even the drill master heard it clearly. Song Jiqiu's face turned cold, and she said fiercely, Briles, look at where you are standing. Of course I know, and you can only listen. Briles, who was not as powerful as her, seemed to have found a new door and a way to be arrogant. He even raised his middle finger. He thought nothing would happen like before. Before Song Jiqiu, who was in line, could make a move, the drill master, who had been staring at him, rushed over and twisted his erect middle finger fiercely. F***CK, F***CK. Let go. Briles, whose finger was almost broken, screamed. He knew the Chinese students did not dare to do anything to him, but he did not expect the drill master to do anything to him. So what if they were exchange students? Here, they had to follow the rules and discipline here. And the drill master had the absolute right to educate him. The drill master could not speak English, so he said fiercely in Chinese, If you don't want your finger, I can twist it off immediately. After that, he said to Yi Qian, translate it in the original language and let him understand. He even scolded him. If he did not teach him a lesson, did he think the drill master was a mascot? Briles could provoke the Chinese students, but he did not have the courage to face the drill master. Especially after he heard Yi Qian's translation, his face became as stiff as stone. The drill master let go of his hand and turned to Yi Qian, saying, "Find a chance to teach him a lesson openly." "Yes." Song Jiqiu answered quickly and suggested in a low voice, "We can arrange free boxing from time to time. The opportunity is just right. It's a compulsory class. No need to arrange too much. There will be one tonight." The drill instructor glanced coldly at Briles, who was spewing profanities. He did not ask Briles to apologize to Yi Qian and Song Jiqiu. There was no need to apologize to such a person. Briles should be dealt with by force. Briles, who had flaunted his superiority for the time being, had no idea how difficult it would be for him before he left China. 10 bullets for fixed-point shooting and 20 bullets for forward searching. 10 bullets for fixed-point shooting and 20 bullets for forward searching were fired. 10 bullets for fixed-point shooting were fired first, and then 20 bullets for forward searching were fired until they were 30 meters away from the target. There were 2 magazines, one with 10 bullets and the other with 20 bullets. After Yi Qian checked the rifle, he checked the amount of bullets in the 2 magazines. After Briles, who was a few meters away, finished his inspection, his gaze swept towards the Chinese student. Seeing that she was still slowly inspecting, his habitual disdain appeared on his face, but it didn't last long. His disdain turned into gloom, and he gripped his rifle tightly. He couldn't accept losing to a Chinese student. "If we fire our empty cartridges at the Chinese students later, what do you think will happen, Briles? Do you dare?" Upon hearing this, Briles withdrew his resentful gaze and stared at Cartwright with his protruding eyes. "But I know that the Chinese have no right to punish us. Therefore, the two of them communicated silently with their eyes, reading the madness in each other's eyes. The Chinese had no right to punish them. So, they wanted to fight, but it was just a thought. There were still 6 Sedoya students between them. They had no chance to create an accident. Chapter 4393. However, the seeds of madness had already been planted and could sprout at any moment. The 3-minute inspection time was up. The 20-round magazine was loaded, and the 10-round magazine was loaded into the rifle. Briles and Cartwright, who were standing in their firing positions, looked at each other with their chins slightly raised. They were very confident and certain. The first whistle sounded, and all 18 students got down on the ground and set up their rifles. The second whistle sounded, the bullets were loaded, and the competition began. Bang, 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 bang. The fixed-point shooting distance was 150 meters away from the target, and there were a total of 10 bullets. Briles and Cartwright fired very quickly. Their shooting skills were considered top-notch, and they had always been confident in their shooting skills. Because of this, Briles was not afraid of death and provoked the Chinese students once again. His left middle finger was still hurting faintly after he fired the shot. The instructor did not break his middle finger because he was an exchange student from another country. He was determined to compete with the Chinese students, so he used his specialty. He carefully calibrated every bullet and maintained his speed at the same time. All 10 bullets hit the chest target. As for the exact number, he still had to confirm it. Cartwright fired very quickly as well. Bang, bang, bang. He fired continuously without any pause in between. It was a 150-meter recumbent chest target shooting competition. The entire shooting range was filled with the sound of gunshots. The 18 people fired at the same time, all of them trying to hit the 10 rings. Their eyes were focused on the crosshairs, and their vision passed through the sunlight, so bright that it was impossible to blink completely before landing on the target to complete the shot. Due to the interference of the sunlight, the target was a little blurry, and so was the camera. It was very difficult to hit all 10 shots with the camera and the target being a little blurry. The assault rifle target practice was 100 meters and 200 meters. The 150-meter shooting today was set up for the competition, and they had also taken into consideration that Monfei and Sedoya students were not familiar with the environment. In some aspects of the arrangements, the school still tried to consider the exchange students from other countries. It could be said that military academy students from other countries who came to the school for an exchange could quickly adapt and like the school. But for Briles and Cartwright, who had come with discrimination and dissatisfaction, no matter what the school arranged, it was impossible for them to be satisfied. They did not know their positions well, and they did not recognize that they were merely exchange students. They thought they were superior in their own countries, so they came with arrogance, ignored the situation of other countries, and ignored the rules and regulations of the school. They emphasized their noble status and bloodline by provoking the students in the school and ignoring the rules and regulations. Their starting points were all wrong, and they were destined not to stay in the school for long. They were also destined not to make the Chinese students give way to them. In view of their misdeeds, the competition was specially held because of their provocation. Yi Jian took the lead and shot the first bullet. Then, Song Jiqiu started to shoot. The 6 Chinese students held their rifles tightly. Their steady gazes passed through the camera, focused on the crosshairs, and locked onto the chest rings. In an instant, more than half of the 10 bullets had been fired. Yi Jian, who was the first to finish shooting, had already raised her head. She placed the small red flag on the right into the soft soil to indicate that she had finished shooting. After recording the time, the next step was to check the rings. Chapter 4394. The arrogant Briles stood up and subconsciously looked in the direction of the Chinese student. The sneer at the corner of his mouth instantly froze. He had thought that he was the first to finish, and that Cartwright beside him would be second. But the truth was someone had finished before him. Briles, whose face and muscles had stiffened, was so angry that his chest hurt. Even his middle finger, which had been twisted by the instructor, was hurting. The damn Chinese student was here. When did she stand up? Did she shoot all 10 bullets or not? Another Chinese student stood up. Cartwright, who he thought would be the second to stand up, had just finished inserting the little red flag. He was about 15 seconds later than the Chinese student. Briles, who had suffered another heavy blow, was heaving up and down rapidly. It took him a lot of effort to retract his gloomy gaze from the Chinese student. It didn't matter. The results of the competition were based on the score on the chest target. So what if she was the first to finish? The results didn't have much to do with the time. Briles, who had failed time and time again, couldn't accept the fact that he had failed. He couldn't face the fact that his skills were inferior. In the end, he used his laughable status and nobility of his bloodline to protect his remaining pride that allowed him to keep his chin up. Cartwright was also in a terrible mood. He had always been confident in his shooting skills and shooting speed. He thought that he would only fall behind the outstanding Briles, but reality had given him a hard slap in the face. When the score on the chest target was tallied, especially Yi Qian's score, Cartwright immediately questioned, "No, that's impossible. I need to check her chest ring. I have my doubts." Apart from Briles' support, the expressions of the other 4 Monfei students turned very, very ugly. No matter how noble their status and bloodline were, it couldn't stop their stupid actions. They were ashamed of their stupid actions. A Sedoya student who happened to be very close to Cartwright took a few steps away from him, widening the distance between them. They were so stupid that even their own students were beginning to feel disgusted. Why hadn't they realized it? The Sedoya student couldn't understand this. The instructor readily agreed to Cartwright's doubts. He wouldn't give up until he saw the coffin, and he wouldn't cry until he saw the coffin. He continued to play high and mighty. He wanted to see if he would become obedient after falling a few more times. The Sedoya students expressed that they didn't have any objections and didn't need to check the target together. The other 4 Monfei students didn't want to go either, but they didn't have the chance to refuse and could only follow. Song Jiqiu was the representative of the Chinese students. She accompanied the instructor and led the students of Monfei to check the target positions. When Yi Qian shot at the chest target, the bullets were concentrated on a single point, and the center point was completely empty. When Cartwright saw the empty center circle, how could he not understand? "Excuse me, do you have any objections? Do you still need to question me?" Song Jiqiu spoke on behalf of the drill master with a cold look. Can we continue with the rest of the competition? I hope you can perform well, and don't let something like this happen again. Thank you. The thank you was full of mockery, making Cartwright's face burn with pain. He was in a sorry state. Are there any objections? Of course not. What he doubted, reality once again slapped them hard in the face. If they were thin-skinned, they would have been too ashamed to run away. However, both of them were thick-skinned and could still continue standing. Chapter 4395. Briles pulled away Cartwright, who had lost all his face and made a joke out of everyone. He only pulled him away and did not apologize for it. Of course, Song Jiqiu did not need their apologies. Apologies from people like them were not sincere, and they would not really realize what they had done wrong. So, why did she need their apologies? She would crush them with her strength until they lost their faces and left like stray dogs. That would be satisfying. Seeing this, Song Jiqiu sneered softly and turned to leave. Monfei's group of 4 felt their faces burning due to the two's disgrace. A male student stood up and walked to Cartwright's side, speaking in a low voice with an indignant expression. All right, Briles, Cartwright, listen up. We don't want to continue standing here and be watched like monkeys. They had made so many mistakes, and they had not been taught a lesson again and again. It was a mistake for Monfei to send Briles and Cartwright to the Chinese military academy. In order to let everyone know that they had noble status and noble blood, they always liked to do things that were completely stupid in the eyes of the Chinese students. The most infuriating thing was that they had never thought that they had done anything stupid. The Monfei students' reprimand made Cartwright lose even more face. There were no Chinese students present, and even the school instructors had left. Cartwright's face instantly became ferocious, and he vented all his anger on the male student. Remember your status. You lowly guy. The male student's face changed immediately. He clenched his fists and expressed his anger with his eyes. That was right. In the eyes of Cartwright and Briles, they were lowly guys who had no right to criticize the guys with noble status. The other 3 male students pulled the student who was so angry that he clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "We still have a competition. Let's go, brother." The Monfei student who had spoken was pulled away. When he left, his angry eyes stared at the 2 people with so-called noble status like nails, and there was a strong unwillingness in the depths of his eyes. Cartwright raised his fist and said something insulting. The student's eyes became red, and the veins on both sides of his temple could be seen bulging under his black skin. Song Jiqiu, who had returned to the shooting position, said to Yi Qian in a deep voice, "Yes, he did. He didn't say anything for a long time. He's so embarrassed. We'll clean him up tonight." Yi Qian put the emphasis on cleaning things up tonight. He smiled and said, "Cleaning things up? Don't cause an international dispute." Song Jiqiu smiled. Under the brim of her hat, her bright eyes were filled with a deep smile. "We have combat training in the evening. What kind of international dispute can we have?" He was very handsome, and when he smiled, it was like the sun that made people happy. Yi Qian looked at him silently for a few seconds, then turned to look in a certain direction. Suan was wiping the sweat on his face with his sleeve. "Don't look at her. She's usually quite smart. She didn't even notice my intentions." Song Jiqiu noticed this and rubbed her forehead helplessly. "I'll find a chance to confess to her during the summer vacation. I hope she won't scream so loudly that everyone knows about it. Find a good place to confess so that she won't have the chance to scream." Yi Qian thought highly of the 2 of them. Suan was careless and sometimes made mistakes. She needed a man like Song Jiqiu who could tolerate her. "That's exactly what I'm thinking. We'll talk about it during the summer vacation." Song Jiqiu glanced at the girl he had a crush on secretly. The tenderness in his eyes was obvious. He always felt that. Suan was not ignorant, but was just playing dumb. Chapter 4396. As for Yi Qian, he really thought that Suan didn't know that he liked her. It didn't matter if she played dumb. He had his ways to make her unable to continue playing dumb. The Monfei students had already returned. The instructor who was talking to the Sedoya students gave them a few words of encouragement and quietly waited for the Monfei students to return. Cartwright dared to be impudent in front of the students, but he still didn't have the guts to face the instructor. When the total shooting scores of the three teams were announced, the instructor specially asked Cartwright and Briles if they had any questions. Both of them said no. Briles didn't appear this time. The facts were right in front of them, and they had nothing to say. The shooting competition hadn't started yet, but the students already knew who would win and who would lose. With Yi Qian present, it would be difficult to win. Moreover, the 6 students participating in this competition were all students with high overall military qualities. They stood there as steady as MT Tai. How could they lose? Other than Briles and Cartwright, the other Monfei and Sedoya students all calmed down. This was a friendly competition in the first place. Now that the outcome was set, they might as well finish the last competition in a relaxed manner. They weren't as strong, so it wasn't strange for them to lose to the Chinese students. There was no need to feel angry. In the last competition, the spectating students weren't watching the competition. Instead, they were watching how the 6 Chinese students would crush the 2 arrogant fellows. Cartwright gripped his rifle tightly and glanced gloomily at the Chinese students who were separated by a few people. Viciousness was entrenched in his eyes, like a spider web. He would teach the Chinese students a good lesson and tell them what the consequences of disrespecting him were. In order to prevent Briles and Cartwright from causing any sudden incidents to the Chinese students, the instructor had specially arranged for the Sedoya students to stand in the middle to separate the Chinese and Monfei students. It was a very wise arrangement that allowed the competition to be completed smoothly. Now that it was the last competition, the two had lost so badly that they could still feel their resentment from a certain distance. To be safe, the instructor had arranged for the instructors to keep a close eye on the two who seemed like they would cause trouble at any time. He also secretly instructed Yi Qian, Song Jiqiu, and the other students to be more careful. Caution was the parent of safety. It was always good to be on guard. A magazine containing 20 bullets was loaded into the rifle. As the whistle sounded, the 18 students loaded the gun and quickly moved forward to open fire. The total shooting range was 100 meters. After reaching 30 meters, all 20 bullets had to be fired within 3 minutes. The pace had to be faster, and the shooting speed had to be faster as well. At the same time, the shooting accuracy had to be guaranteed. Naturally, the difficulty increased. Su Wen stared at Yi Qian with her eyes that were red from sweat. She couldn't scream for the time being, so she tried her best to hold it in until her neck turned red. She couldn't help but pinch her own thigh again. He Jing frowned and grabbed her arm tightly. The gunshots in the arena were extremely intense. Suddenly, Cartwright, who was walking quickly, seemed to have kicked something. He stumbled forward and lost his balance, falling down after a few steps. The contestants continued to advance and shoot. Cartwright, who had fallen, had probably sprained his ankle. When he got up for the first time, he fell again. The instructor, who had been watching him closely, ran over. The second time Cartwright got up and stood up, the contestant had already surpassed him and was at least 2 bullets behind. He was in last place, which meant that he was standing behind all the other contestants. When the instructor who was running over saw this, his eyebrows twitched fiercely. He seemed to have thought of something, and even his pupils instantly contracted. Danger! The Chinese students were in danger. Chapter 4397. As this thought flashed through his mind, the instructor saw Cartwright stagger like a drunkard, the cold, black muzzle of the gun aimed at the Chinese students. The instructor was not the only one who noticed this. The instructors who were also watching Cartwright and Briles, as well as several other instructors, had noticed as well. The students who were competing in front did not notice. Although Yi Qian, Song Jiqiu, and the other 5 Chinese students had been warned beforehand, who would have thought that Cartwright would be so bold as to play tricks during the competition, intending to hurt the Chinese students? No one would have thought that he would be so stupid. Even the equally arrogant Briles did not think that he would really do this. Cartwright looked unsteady on his feet, but his eyes were fixed on the Chinese students. He knew that what he was doing was very dangerous, but that was what he wanted to do. After something happened, the Chinese military academy had no right to punish him. They would only transfer him back to China. Ha ha ha. Transfer him back to China? Ha. He liked it. What is he trying to do? He's aiming his gun at Yi Qian and the others. Instructor, instructor. The students had already reacted. Yi Qian students were the loudest. Only Su Wen's voice was deafening. The students who noticed the problem with Cartwright were enraged. The instructor dashed over like a hungry tiger, pouncing on its prey. He grabbed the barrel of the rifle aimed at the Chinese students and lifted it into the air. Bang! A blank bullet used during training was fired into the air. At the same time, the cold-faced instructor gripped Cartwright's arm tightly, one of his legs propping him up. Using his shoulder as a fulcrum, Cartwright, who had no time to react, was thrown over his shoulder by the instructor and flung out. Ah! Cartwright's screams rose from the ground amidst the gunfire that did not stop. Not only did the instructor throw him over his shoulder, he also dislocated his right arm, starting from the wrist to the elbow and then to the shoulder. The three major joints of the right arm were all dislocated. The screams did not stop, but they did not even cause a small splash among the gunfire. The Monfei students in front did not know that something had happened to Cartwright. They only wanted to end this competition as soon as possible. As for what was happening behind them, they really did not notice. Yi Qian did not notice either. 17 rifles fired at the same time. The sound of gunfire shook the entire competition grounds. Someone screamed. Sorry, there was no other noise after the sound of gunfire. Don't move, or I'll break your neck. The ferocious instructor swiftly dislocated Cartwright's arm and turned a deaf ear to Cartwright's screams. This bastard actually dared to play such a dirty trick under my nose. Heh, if I don't teach him a lesson, he'll really treat himself as if he's still in Monfei. You have to have the ability to do whatever you want. Cartwright had been the University of Science and Technology of China for more than 20 days, and he had never experienced such pain before. When he realized that he could not struggle, he began to curse. Damn you! Get lost! Get lost! Insults kept coming out of his mouth. 3 minutes had passed, and the gunshots stopped instantly. The 18 contestants were 30 meters away from the target and had finished firing 20 bullets. They were only waiting to be unloaded and checked. Without the gunshots, Cartwright's screams and curses could be heard clearly. The 6 Sedoya students and the 6 Chinese students did not turn around. Click, click. The sound of countless magazines being unloaded could be heard. They were all done at almost the same time. The 4 Monfei students looked back and saw that Cartwright was pressed to the ground. They did not say anything and continued to complete the last step of the competition. Chapter 4398. Briles, who also turned around, did not just turn his head like the other 4 students. He held his rifle and turned around while maintaining his shooting posture, aiming the cold muzzle at a certain spot. Before he saw Cartwright, a pair of strong hands grab his wrist and instantly press his arm down. You violated the rules. Run 3 kilometers. The cold gaze seemed to have seen through what he was trying to do. Shock flashed in Briles' eyes, and he immediately put down his gun. The Chinese instructor? When did he stand behind me? I don't think I've violated the rules. I just wanted to see what happened to my comrade. So, I can't accept the punishment. He tried to argue and struggle, but his hand hurt from the instructor's grip. He could not even lift his arm. The instructor in charge of the exchange students' daily training was a graduate of the National University of Science and Technology. His English was good, and he could even act as a translator. Hearing this, the instructor gripped his rifle tightly and said coldly, "To prevent accidents from happening, immediately remove the magazine after shooting. This is the rule of the competition, and you violated the rules. Don't try to argue. All the students' actions are recorded. What did you do just now? We can watch it slowly through the camera." Being recorded? Panic flashed in Briles' eyes, and he stopped talking. He shrugged and loosened his grip on his rifle. He did not have any bullets in his magazine, but he wanted to scare the Chinese students. Knowing that he could not escape punishment, Briles became obedient for the time being. He looked at Cartwright, who was still screaming and yelling. His eyes widened, and he roared, "What are you doing? Damn it, let him go. Let him go." What did he see? He saw Cartwright being pressed down by a Chinese instructor, and he saw his comrade being abused by the Chinese instructor. Briles' face instantly contorted. Fuck! Fuck! Just now, he wanted to use his last blank bullet to teach the Chinese student a lesson, but he gave up in the end. Now, he regretted giving up. He should not have given up. If he did not give up, he could have used his last blank bullet to shoot that damn instructor who was abusing Cartwright. Briles, whose face was contorted, wanted to rush over to save Cartwright, but the instructor who was staring at him blocked his way. "Briles, I don't mind using the same method to treat you. Are you sure you want to rush past me? Let the Chinese students see him being knocked down by the instructor." Briles scanned his surroundings. He saw the 6 Chinese students who were participating in the competition coldly staring at him. The students who saw Saidu also looked at him coldly and mockingly. Seeing the ruthlessness in the instructor's eyes, Briles chose not to move. He gritted his teeth and said, "I will sue you. I will definitely sue you. You're welcome at any time. Before you accuse me, let's hear the results of the competition first." The instructor said calmly, completely ignoring the so-called accusation. Yi Qian strapped his rifle to his back. His eyes, as dark as the night, seemed to be filled with ice. Before the competition, the instructor had told them to keep an eye on their surroundings. It seemed that Cartwright had indeed made some small movements during the shooting, but the instructor, who had been watching him closely, had stopped him in time. What kind of tricks would he play with a gun in his hand? There was no need to think too deeply about it. He only needed to think a little to know. Blanks were equally lethal within 5 meters. What did Cartwright want? He wanted to use the empty cartridge to shoot at any one of the students. They'll be sent back to Manfell by tomorrow at the latest. Song Jichio's voice, which was wrapped in coldness, drifted into his ears. Her expression was as cold as her voice. Chapter 43:99. She did not care whether the 2 students from Monfei would return to Yi Qian the next day. She did not even care about the final result of this friendly competition. Winning was very normal. The 6 students from a National University of Science and Technology were strong and had been stepped on by the other country's students. If they did not show some real skill to teach these arrogant fellows a lesson, they would not be worthy of being students of their own school. The results were announced. The Chinese side had won all 3 matches. Briles was lucky that he was black. His face remained the same throughout, and nothing could be seen. His expression was still all right, but he did his best to control his expression so that no one could see how wretched he was beneath his skin. As for Cartwright, his mistake was no ordinary mistake. He did not even have the right to stand here and listen to the results of the competition, and was immediately taken away. Without Cartwright by his side, Briles had lost a partner that he could support. Fighting alone against the Chinese student who had defeated him, no matter how unwilling he was in his heart, no matter how noble his bloodline was, he could only lie down obediently. The endless applause from the Chinese students fell into Briles' ears, making his face burn more and more. The applause was like a slap to his face, and the louder the applause, the more painful his face would feel. Overestimating one's own strength, yet not knowing it, arrogant and full of oneself. The outcome of provoking others everywhere was just like Briles was now. Even breathing had become a torment. The Chinese students would naturally enjoy Briles' wretched state, applauding as they did so. They wanted to see how thick his skin was and how long he could maintain his calm facade. Briles did not ask where Cartwright had been taken to. As a military academy student, he knew very well how bad the nature of Cartwright's mistake was. But so what? Even if Cartwright, who had not harmed any of the Chinese students, was punished, he would only return to Monfei. The Chinese military academy had no right to do so. The applause finally ended, and the sudden, friendly competition came to an end. The freshmen and fourth-year students who had been watching the competition led their teams back to the training grounds. The students of the 3rd and 4th year classes also led their teams back to the training grounds. Every student's arms were now drenched in sweat from the sun, and their faces were flushed red. Some even burned their skin, but no one cared about this. Every young face was full of smiles, brighter and hotter than the sun. He broke the record. He really broke the record. I heard the instructor confirm it with the instructor with my own ears. It can't be wrong. Didn't the students from her class say it too? They did break Senior's record, being 4 seconds faster than him. 4 seconds faster. So powerful. 4 seconds was not to be underestimated. 4 seconds was enough to clear an obstacle course, which was why the students were surprised. She's always been amazing. From her 1st year to her 3rd year. When was there a time when she wasn't amazing? That's right. There's never a time when you're not powerful. However, she was still quite surprised that she broke her senior brother's record today. Senior apprentice brother is not an ordinary person. Senior brother is not an ordinary person. Yi Qian is also not an ordinary person. In a certain military base, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had caught a cold for the first time, sneezed incessantly as he trained the soldiers. Even his voice was hoarse. In the end, his nose was too itchy and unbearable. So Lieutenant Colonel Xia simply rolled the tissue into a long strip and stuffed it directly into his nose and into his G3 eyes. Taking 4 or 5 cold showers in the middle of the night, and even running laps in just a pair of fitness shorts like crazy. If you don't catch a cold, then you're sorry for the cold water you wasted last night. Chapter 4400. Achoo! With another sneeze, Xia Jinyuan spat out the napkin that was stuffed into his nostrils. He was quick to react and caught the napkin in his hand before stuffing it back into his nose. He turned his head and said to G3, "A full man doesn't know the suffering of a hungry man. Brother, I'm full of hostility towards married men now. To avoid hurting our comradeship, please stay away from my sight immediately." G3 didn't understand the deeper meaning behind his words. When he realized what was going on, he burst into laughter. "Why don't you roll around in the mud with them to consume some energy?" Young and energetic. As a comrade in arms, G3 felt that he still cared about their captain. Young people were too energetic. If they weren't careful, they would get hurt. TSK, they were a perfect example. A full man doesn't know the suffering of a hungry man. Ha ha ha. He looked at the young captain who was sitting in the front row with one leg over the car door and the other bent over the passenger seat. Ha ha. Why did he feel like laughing so much? The two of them sat in the mountain bike. It was early to dry in the mountains. Although the sun was scorching at 3 in the afternoon, Xia Jinyuan drove the mountain bike under the shade of a tree. It was cool above their heads, and the mountain breeze blew on them. It wasn't too hot, and there were even gusts of cool breeze. G3, who was sitting in the back row, was laughing so hard that he was leaning forward and backward. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the front row, turned his head and glanced at the guy who had no comradeship at all. He stepped on the lever of the mountain bike and shook his leg like a ruffian. As the vice captain, shouldn't you go down and give them some guidance? Xia Jinyuan, who had long limbs, had nowhere to stretch his limbs, even though he was sitting in the wide, open mountain bike. He had to curl them up a little. Therefore, every time he stopped the bike, he would climb onto the seat so that his limbs would be more comfortable. He was comfortable, but the Special Forces soldiers who were hugging logs and yelling loudly in the mud pit weren't comfortable. Especially when they saw the two captains sitting in the car and chatting. They even King caught a cold. They felt so aggrieved. They felt so stifled that they wanted to beat someone up. They were sitting in the car and catching a cold. How could they enjoy it so much? Captain, come. Freshly baked watermelon from the kitchen. The juice is still dripping from the watermelon stem. Quickly taste it and see if it's sweet. The Special Forces soldiers who were in the midst of training had yet to recover from the first wave of grievances when the second wave of grievances came. There was even a watermelon to eat. They were drinking muddy water, but their captain was eating watermelon. A few of the Special Forces soldiers were fuming. What kind of lousy captain was this? They had not seen him for a whole year. Now that he finally showed his face and dealt with them like the king of hell, they really wanted to put him in a gunny sack and give him a good beating. Are all of them young ladies? Did he not eat? Did he have no strength? Pick them up and don't let me see you on my lap. Carry him. Water cannon, water cannon. Beside the mud pit, the T6 combatant was holding a megaphone in his hand. His delicate baby face was no longer as gentle as usual. His eyes were as sharp as arrows as he stared at the 30 Special Forces soldiers in the mud pit with a murderous aura. No one would be able to escape his eyes if they let their guard down. Beside him was V8, who was holding a high-pressure water cannon. The two of them were partners and worked together seamlessly. T6 shouted, "Water cannon." V8 opened the door of the raft, and a stream of water gushed into the mud like a dragon. It was not sprayed at the mud, but at the Special Forces soldiers who were undergoing brutal training. The water pressure was very high, and it hurt when it hit their bodies. Their stamina was already very high, and after being sprayed by the high-pressure water cannon, it became even more difficult for them to lie down and sit up while hugging logs. They could not sit up several times, but even so, they still persevered and did not give up. Chapter 44:01. What are you doing? Those in the middle, what are you doing? Are you drinking water? If you want to drink water, put your head in the water. T6 continued to shout. His fierce voice was amplified through the loudspeaker, and Xia Jinyuan, G3, and Z7, who had brought the melons over. Han Zheng heard everything. T6, this kid is getting more and more stubborn. He doesn't look like a doe at all when he first arrived. G3 weighed a watermelon in his hand and interrupted. This melon isn't fully ripe yet, right? It's ripe, it's ripe. The cookery team picked 8 melons and specially picked this big and red one for me. Han Zheng looked at the soldiers training in the mud pit in front of him and said emotionally, "In the blink of an eye, I've become a veteran. You're already old. Stop blinking." G3, who was speaking, drew his combat dagger and cut the big watermelon into 2. A sweet and crisp sound could be heard. The red melon ladle was revealed, and fresh red melon juice flowed out. Not bad, it looks sweet. The melon was cut into 5 pieces, leaving a piece for T6 and V8 who were watching the training. Xia Jinyuan took the biggest slice and narrowed his eyes slightly. He said to Han Zheng, "Send the melon over and eat it in front of them." Han Zheng, who had a melon ladle in his mouth, chewed twice and swallowed it. He was in too much of a hurry and even choked a few times. This is too exciting. 30 people were soaking in the mud and roaring. The veterans were standing outside the mud pit and eating melons as if they were watching a show. This was really King exciting. Xia Jinyuan did not say anything. He moved his long legs, which were half a level higher than the mountain bike, and glanced at Han Zheng with a half smile. He did not say anything, but it was enough to make Han Zheng's heart skip a beat. He put aside the melon slice in his hand, picked up the other 2 slices, and quickly ran to deliver them. G3 smiled and did not say anything. If he couldn't even tolerate small things, he would still have a long way to go before he could truly become a Special Forces soldier of the Snowfield Brigade. Humans were very strange. They were often very tolerant when it came to big matters, but they were very intolerant when it came to small matters. When others hit you a few times, you would be able to endure it because you saw how powerful they were. When others scolded you, you saw that you only knew how to use your mouth, so you retaliated on the spot. Then, the 2 of them used martial arts to KO each other. If it was light, it would be over after a fight. If it was heavy, they would even use weapons. A moment of impatience, and in the end, a small matter would turn into a big matter. Q King was very good at grasping the opponent's weakness, especially when the opponent's willpower was at its weakest. He would instantly grab hold of it and then use the right medicine. Every time he attacked, he had never failed. Back then, Q King had failed to subdue his veterans, including himself, and all of them had ended up like this. He defeated them one by one, and in the end they were convinced. For Xia Jinyuan, even though Yin Rong, a G3 member, had joined the Snowfield Brigade 2 years earlier than Xia Jinyuan, he was still convinced. In the front, T6 and V8 took the watermelon from Z7, took a bite, and praised it for being sweet. When the Special Forces soldiers in the mud saw this, their eyes were so red that they were about to burst into flames. One of the Special Forces soldiers had only loosened his grip a little when he was immediately discovered by T6, who was still eating the watermelon. T6's face instantly darkened. He picked up the loudspeaker on the ground and shouted, "Don't be a disgrace here if you don't have the guts. Pack your things and go home." G3 clicked his tongue and said to Xia Jinyuan, "You're still a little weak. It's more intimidating to just tell them to pack up their things and go home." Xia Jinyuan, who had been sitting in his seat for a long time and his buttocks were uncomfortable, had one hand on the car door. His tall and slender body was as strong as a cheetah as he jumped out of the car and stood steadily outside. His eagle-like eyes stared ahead with interest. It was obvious that he was waiting for them to make a fuss. Chapter 44:02. It was better to cause a ruckus. If they caused a ruckus, they would clean up. Slowly, their edges would be smoothed out, and they would be calm on the battlefield. Slowly, they would become qualified Special Forces soldiers. When they arrived at the Snowfield Brigade, they were all able-bodied and high-spirited young men. He hoped that when they left the army, they would still be able-bodied, high-spirited, and mature young men. If they joined the army alive, they would also have to leave the army alive. There were enough names in the cemetery of martyrs. If he could add a few more, then so be it. Xia Jinyuan's black eyes gradually became gloomy as he looked ahead. Even the aura around him gradually became gloomy. His thin lips were tightly pursed as he said calmly, "I've added enough enhancers. Let's see who's the first to resist. Remember their names. There are a few young men with great potential who need to be taught a lesson. A few days ago, I heard a few young men muttering that they would put a sack on me one day. I've waited until now, but I haven't seen them take action. They have the intention, but don't have the guts. How boring." G3 laughed. "You're the only one who wants to be put in a sack." G3 raised his eyebrows and laughed again. "If such a day really comes, it's hard to say who will teach you a lesson." Xia Jinyuan said, "If they really have the ability to teach me a lesson, I'll be happy to be beaten up. I've been here for 2 years and trained for 2 years. It's time to go on a mission." "Did the boss say?" G3 asked. Xia Jinyuan pulled a blade of grass and put it in his mouth as he chewed. He nodded. "Yes, he said that it will start in the second half of the year." On the second day after returning from Libya, Xia Jinyuan, who had returned to the base, received a call from Major General Yang. He mentioned that the soldiers who had entered the Snowfield Brigade 2 years ago and hadn't gone on a mission yet would be completed by them in the second half of the year. They would start with border missions and then go abroad. G3 was silent for a moment before replying, "That's fast. 2 years in the blink of an eye. Tomorrow, let Baihe lead the team to train us. In early July, we'll have an actual combat exercise in Nanjiang." Xia Jinyuan didn't finish his sentence. He thought for a moment before continuing, "When Qing Yao is on summer vacation, we have to pull her in too. Act as the enemy? See, I'm more inclined to put her in this group of soldiers. That's feasible. Since you intend to nurture them, you should lead them into battle in advance." G3 nodded. He was also inclined to assign Qing Yao to the team of soldiers who would be carrying out missions in the second half of the year. Although the soldiers in training had been in the Snowfield Brigade for 2 years, they had not carried out any missions and could not be considered as real special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. As the two captains talked about the upcoming training arrangements, the Special Forces soldiers who were training in the mud pit in front of them were on the verge of exploding. The veterans, who were secretly observing their emotional changes, recorded them one by one and quickly reported them to Xia Jinyuan, who had finished eating and was enjoying the cool air. In the base, the Special Forces soldiers who had yet to carry out their missions were all exposed to the eyes of the veterans, except for when they went to the bathroom or took a shower. Then, they were presented to Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan, who had left the team for a year and a half because of Cobra, returned to the base in only 3 days to grasp all their information. It had to be said that it was terrifying. The terrifying Lieutenant Colonel Xia still didn't know that his record at the National University of Science and Technology had been broken by the girlfriend he had grown up with. Far away in Xiang City, Yi Qian stared at the record of her boyfriend's 400-meter obstacle test results and smirked. Very happy. Faster than Captain Xia by 4 seconds. The next time they met, she must tell him that in the future, the school's best record for the 400-meter obstacle test would be hers, waiting for the junior brothers and sisters below to challenge it. Chapter 44:03. The smiling Yi Qian returned the report card to the director. The ink had faded, and the edges of the paper were slightly yellowed. He couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. The director and the instructor smiled at each other. They could understand why she was so happy. Little Yi, there's still 1 more year to go. You can continue to work hard and graduate with better overall results for the future students to refer to. Even if you've already graduated, the results you left behind can continue to motivate them. The director laughed and said. He was also very happy. Xia Jinyuan, who had broken the record by Yi Qian, used to be his student. Now, Yi Qian, who had broken the record, was his student. How could he not be happy? As for Man Fei and the other 2 students, they could be dealt with however they wanted. It wouldn't affect his good mood. When Yi Qian returned to the dormitory, he was still secretly happy from time to time. When he saw Su Wen and He Jing, he was scared witless. Why was this child so strange? She had set a new 400-meter obstacle course record. She didn't seem very excited at the time. Why was she so happy after coming back from the director's office? Su Wen couldn't help but ask her. Then, she received an answer that made Su Wen's heart ache. Senior Xia is my boyfriend. You met him before. I broke his record, so I'm very happy. F***CK. In an instant, Su Wen collapsed on He Jing's shoulder and said weakly, my mouth is cheap. Why did I ask? Why did I hear such a heart-wrenching answer? Did you consider the feelings of single people? He Jing patted Su Wen's shoulder. You're not the only one feeling heart-wrenching. I'm with you. Therefore, the secretly happy child took down Senior Xia, who still had a legend, and turned him into her boyfriend. Therefore, there would be legends about them in the future at the National University of Science and Technology. If the juniors in the future knew about the relationship between Senior Xia and Senior Yi, it would probably be very heart-wrenching. They had already graduated. Not only did they leave behind a legend, but they were also a couple. What should I do? I'm so heartbroken. Quick, tell me honestly. How did you meet Senior Xia? How did you take him down? Tell me. The heart-wrenching Su Wen pounced on Yi Qian with a ferocious face, trying to force a confession out. Yi Jian laughed and hid. Her eyes were full of tenderness. She was laughing because of Xia Jinyuan, who was in a base in the north. As for Briles and Cartwright, Yi Jian had completely forgotten about them after the match. Bree. As for Man Fei and the other students, they didn't want to be with him at all. Then a video came. It made the Man Fei military even more ashamed. Even the military school in Man Fei that sent Bree and Cartwright was ashamed. In less than a day, the procedures to send them back to Man Fei were completed. Bree and Cartwright, whose joints had been reconnected, left the National University of Science and Technology that very night and were sent back to Man Fei. What awaited them was not a trip to West Point, but expulsion and half a year of imprisonment. Yi Qian didn't know that Bree and Cartwright had been sent back to their country until the end of June. Chapter 44:04. The third-year students entered the joint entrance exam, while the fourth-year students entered the graduation season. This was the third batch of graduates sent away by Yi Qian in the 3 years since they entered the school. The third-year and fourth-year senior brothers and sisters who were trained by them during the first year had already spread to every corner of the motherland. Now it was time to send away their former first-year and then second-year senior brothers and sisters. Other people look at salary when they graduate. We look at the map of the motherland when we graduate. Graduation season was approaching. The senior brothers and sisters looked at the map of the motherland the most because there would be places they were about to go. Carrying their luggage, they didn't even have time to say goodbye before they went their separate ways. Henceforth, the National Science and Technology University would become a memory of their military career. The sweat and tears that flowed on the training ground would also become a memory. 4 years of schoolmates, they didn't know when they would be able to reunite again. Some people might not meet again for a lifetime. At this time, the senior brothers and sisters of the 4th year all had the ferocious will to review the 4 years from the 1st year to the 4th year before leaving the campus. One by one, they burst out all the strength that they had been saving up for the past 4 years. The most typical was that the decibel that they roared out during training could directly overshadow the 1st year and 2nd year students who were training next door. This stimulated the 1st year and 2nd year teachers. They were just short of holding a small whip in their hands to spur the 1st year and 2nd year students to move forward. Move forward, move forward, work hard, and work hard. The 3rd year students were far away from this wave of stimulation. There were only 3 days until the joint entrance exam. The 5-kilometer, 400-meter obstacle course, rifle precision shooting, formation, and other subjects were all finished in one go. If they wanted to get good results, they must go all out and put all their time and energy into training. The 4th year senior brothers and sisters wanted to take advantage of their last school days to review the 4 years of time in the military academy. Then, the 3rd year students rushed to train, stepped up their practice, endured the tempering of the hot and high temperature, and finally succeeded in defeating the joint entrance exam. In the last 3 days before the joint entrance exam, Xiang City became a furnace. The outdoor temperature reached 37 degrees. Every time after training, the sweat on the body would completely soak the training uniform. Taking off the jacket and twisting it, as if they were fished out of the water, the sweat would flow with a hua-hua sound. Needless to say, his military boots were soaked in sweat. His toes were soaked to the point of ulceration. His heels and insteps were bruised to the point of being badly mutilated. When his socks were taken off, his face was pale as if he had died in the next second. On the last day before the joint examination, the school showed a rare display of kindness. That night, all the faculties actually organized an outdoor movie. Moreover, it was a romantic movie. The main theme was that the emperor and his sister felt bored living in the palace, so they snuck out to Jiangnan to relax. In the end, both of them reaped love in a romantic comedy movie. When it was announced that they would be watching an outdoor movie at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the whistle blew, signaling the end of the training. The students stood at attention in a straight line, facing the sun that refused to set even after a long time. After enduring the scorching heat, sweat gathered under their training caps and eventually formed a small stream that flowed down their cheeks and into their training uniforms. The sweat between their 10 fingers dripped like rain. The military boots were soaked in sweat and strongly sterilized. Their eyes were like steel. They stood with their spears. No matter how bitter and tiring it was, they clenched their teeth and persevered, never shrinking back. Yi Qian, who had finished organizing the team, clamped his arms together and rhythmically trotted to the front of the instructor standing at the front. His crisp voice pierced through the air, reporting, "The 3rd platoon should have 45 people. The actual 45 people have arrived. The formation is complete. Please give instructions." Sonorous and powerful, without any sign of tiredness. The instructor returned the military salute and let Yi Qian return to the team. Waiting for Yi Qian to return to the team, the instructor standing at the front of the students took a few steps with ease. With just these few steps, the eyes of the students below all lit up. Chapter 4405. The instructor had taught them for a long time, so they knew some of his habits. For example, when he was angry, he liked to go on stage and say hee 3 times. Then, the students in line would know that a storm was coming and would be prepared. For example, when he was happy, he would first cough 3 times and say, "Today, you guys are a bit like soldiers." The students would know that he would soon leave training and go back to the dormitory to rest. For example, when he took a few steps forward and glanced at the students' faces from time to time, he would purposely not say anything. Then, he would know that there was good news to announce. At first, this action could scare the students. They thought that they were going to be baptized by a storm, but after a long time, they figured it out. After a few steps, the instructor stood still with his hands behind his back and coughed a few times. Some students, like Sue 1, could not help but smile. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Good news, very good news. It was very likely that there would be no training tonight. Tomorrow was the joint examination, and then the fourth-year students would have a graduation party. The school would definitely want the third-year students to relax with the fourth-year students. Suwon thought about how she could go to bed early tonight and not be woken up by the whistle in the middle of the night. She almost laughed out loud when she thought about how she could complete the assembly within 3 minutes. Tomorrow is the third-year joint examination. Seeing that you guys have been working hard for the past few months, the school has decided to organize tonight. Seeing that the instructor was about to announce the good news, he deliberately paused. No matter how calm the students were, they were still hooked by the instructor's words. Organizing tonight, what would they do? Say it. Suwon stared anxiously with her eyes wide open. Suwon, what are you thinking about? Your eyes are as big as a cow's. Stop staring. Your eyes won't become as big as a cow's. The instructor suddenly called out her name. Suwon choked and quickly reported that she was not thinking about anything. Sweat flowed into her eyes and stung her eyes. The instructor smiled at her. He obviously did not believe her. Not far away, one of the platoon's training suddenly burst into cheers, followed by another platoon. Obviously, their instructor had announced the good news. Yi Chien saw a flash of embarrassment on the instructor's face. He wanted to be the first to announce it, but the other platoons beat him to it. Seeing that you guys have been working hard for the past few months, the school has decided to organize an outdoor movie tonight. After the movie, gather back to the dormitory. Finally, the instructor stopped dragging things out and announced tonight's good news. The class instantly boiled over. Isn't this great news? There was a movie to watch. After watching the movie, they could go back to the dormitory to rest and prepare for tomorrow's joint examination. The third and fourth year students were happily preparing to watch a movie tonight. As for what movie would be playing tonight, they really didn't think to ask. Documentaries and anti-Japanese war films were the main films of outdoor movies. There was no need to think about or ask about other types of films. Watching the movie was secondary. The main thing was that he could have a good rest tonight. The entire training ground was in an uproar. The seniors and juniors were able to watch the outdoor movie tonight. The freshmen and sophomores were also able to watch it. However, they still had to run 3 kilometers after the movie. Even so, they were still very excited. Teacher, what movie are you playing? Martial arts film? Anti-Japanese war film? A documentary? The freshmen hadn't figured out the rules yet. Instead, they had lost their basic judgment and asked loudly, "As long as it's a movie, I'll watch it. I'm not picky." Some students hurriedly spoke up, afraid that the instructor would be unhappy and cancel the entire training with a wave of his hand. Chapter 4406. A few types of movies have been mentioned, but only romance and horror movies were left out. Horror movies would have some unsuitable scenes, so they would not be broadcasted. As for romance movies, they had never seen one in their 3 years of military school. Not only had the third-year students not seen it, even the fourth-year students had not seen it before. The third-year and fourth-year students did not ask at all. The first-year students asked excitedly, and the second-year students surrounded them. And Yi Chien's class was the first to know what kind of movie they were going to watch tonight. Romance movie. Is it really a romance movie? It can't be. Instructor, are you sure we're going to watch a romance movie tonight? You're not lying to us? I'm a third-year student in a military school, and I'm actually lucky enough to watch a romance movie in school. I'm satisfied. Dozens of impossible things have happened in reality. We watched a romance movie in school, and it will be recorded in the history books of our class. Thank you to our school. Thank you to the leaders. Thank you to the team leaders. Thank you to the teachers. Thank you to the students. Thank you for letting us watch a romance movie. That night, the third-year and fourth-year students were all in high spirits, shouting slogans and singing the battle song of a strong army. They took their small stools and lined up in the open-air field. There were too many students, and one open-air field was not enough, so they were split into two groups. The first-year and second-year students were in one group, and they watched from the other training ground. The third-year and fourth-year students were in the other group. Prepare to put down the stools. Put. Sit. Following the cadre's command, the teams of students instantly sat down with a whoosh and a strong gust of wind. The first-year students sat upright with their hands on their knees, just like how they sat during a meeting waiting for the movie to start. The second-year students were a little better. They could sit in whatever position they liked until the movie ended. The third-year students were a little better than the second-year students. When they sat down, they sat in the standard first-year sitting position. When the movie started, they immediately adjusted their positions to their liking. They could even change their sitting positions midway, however comfortable they were. The older students, like the fourth-year seniors, especially the single seniors, would be a little more impudent at this time. They entered the field early and sat down. Although their sitting positions were standard, they would occasionally glance outside. What were they looking at? Of course, they were looking at the female students. Senior brothers and senior sisters who were in a relationship would often secretly change seats at this time. The two of them would sit side by side, and when the lights were dim, the two of them could even play some tricks. It was not easy to have an underground relationship, especially one within the military academy. Holding hands on campus and whatnot, don't even dream about it. Holding hands outside of school was his F***king dream since the beginning of their relationship. Either she didn't have the time, or he didn't have the time. It wasn't easy for them to go out for half a day on Saturdays and Sundays. Either he needed to train, or she needed to train, but they kept missing each other. Up until now, the time they held hands could be counted on one hand. Most of the time, they were separated by classes and crowds. This wasn't bad, but they couldn't stare for too long. The pickets kept a close eye on them, and the instructors kept a close eye on them. If they weren't careful, the two of them would die together. Therefore, even if we look at each other, we have to pretend that we are not familiar with each other. We only have the camaraderie of schoolmates and comrades. There is no love between us. When Yi Jian saw three couples secretly holding hands, she thought of her boyfriend who had gone missing once again. Within the country? Abroad? Or was he training? She had no idea. No news, no letters, no phone calls. She also didn't know if she could continue training at the Snowfield Brigade base during the summer break. Chapter 4407. If she could go, he would also be there, and they would be able to see each other every day. Moreover, her line of sight fell on the lover, who immediately let go because of the appearance of the duty officer. She couldn't help but chuckle. Compared to the underground lovers in the school, she and Captain Xia's love was very free. They could hold hands while shopping, they could tiptoe and kiss and cough. They even slept in the same bed. She believed that the three couples she discovered absolutely didn't do what she and Captain Xia did. She also didn't know if he was thinking of her right now. He should be thinking of her. Yi Qian thought as her thoughts gradually drifted away. The movie hadn't started yet, and the mosquito army was already attacking. Both arms and face became the disaster area. The unlucky ones even had their buttocks attacked. After dealing with the three mosquitoes, Yi Qian whispered to He Jing, "Tonight, the happiest ones aren't us. It's the vampire army. I've already bitten a few swabs. I've been bitten several times on the outside of my thigh. It's extremely itchy. I hope the romance movie playing can make up for it." He Jing lightly scratched the itch and wiped the sweat on her face. Xiang City at night was very hot and stuffy. There wasn't a trace of wind. The weather forecast said there would be showers tonight. Hot, stuffy, and being bitten by mosquitoes didn't hinder the students' interest in watching the romance movie. When a movie started to play, everyone became focused. The actors in the movie were all capable. Their acting skills and appearance were all online. The students didn't even notice the mosquito bites. It wasn't a very pure romance movie. It was composed of three big elements: family, friendship, and love. In the end, there were several sensitive scenes. The originally quiet students had all kinds of voices. They kissed. The male students saw it and secretly rubbed their hands. The female students saw it and were somewhat unnatural. Yiqian's eyes flashed, and he silently looked away. Thousands of people were watching a kissing scene with the students in the class. She also couldn't bear it. There was a heat source by her side. Then she heard Su Wen's small, warm voice. "Have you and Senior Xia kissed before?" Yiqian's little finger lightly flicked. In her mind, there was already a handsome face, slender eyebrows, elegant facial features, a smile full of roguishness, but also as sharp as an arrow. That him, and they kissed before. There was no reply. Yiqian only nodded lightly. Su Wen suddenly laughed mischievously. "How do you feel? Does Senior Marshal Brother Xia have that?" "What do you mean, which one?" Yiqian did not understand and turned to look at her. The two of them were very close to each other, and the night was very dark. They could only vaguely see each other's facial features, but their expressions could not be clearly seen. Although his expression couldn't be seen clearly, Su Wen's expression was really too sneaky. It was as if he had stolen the most precious treasure and couldn't help but want to show it off. Showing off? Yiqian seemed to have thought of something. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Could it be that the two of them were already a couple? Yiqian narrowed his eyes and asked calmly, "How do you feel?" Su Wen replied, "I received it 2 days ago. The tip of my tongue was bitten by Song Jiqiu. It was just a trick, and Yi Jian easily tricked him out. Song Jiqiu had some tricks. In the last competition, he had just said that he would find a chance to confess to Su Wen. In less than a month, their relationship had been confirmed, and they had even secretly kissed. Yiqian was convinced by their speed. She had met Captain Xia in the second year of junior high school and had only confirmed their relationship in the third year of senior high school. It had taken her 4.5 years. The two of them had been together for less than a month at the speed of light. Chapter 44:08. Speed and efficiency were good things. As their comrade in arms, she was happy for them to be together. However, she was also worried about their speed. "How dare you kiss on campus? You'll be punished if you're caught." Yiqian reminded them gently and advised them, "Even if you can't control yourself, there should be a limit. It's summer vacation soon. Bear with it." The seniors who were about to leave did not dare to be so presumptuous. Su Wen and Song Jiqiu were too bold. Yiqian had to persuade them. "I didn't dare to be presumptuous, so I tried in a hurry. He bit my tongue, and I bit his lips. Alas, it felt good, but it was too short." Thinking of the kiss a few days ago, Su Wen felt unsatisfied. Hearing Yiqian's words, she rubbed her forehead for fear that something bad would happen. "Control. Control. Do you understand? Song Jiqiu can control herself, but I can't. I have to learn from you." Yiqian was speechless. He couldn't teach this kid. Shouldn't it be that men can't control themselves, but women can? Why was it the opposite when it came to her? The movie came to an end. In the end, the lovers finally got married. The seniors who were about to graduate and go to different parts of the country to start a new military career watched the only romance film of the 4-year military school. As they lined up and left, tonight became a memory. The juniors watched the seniors leave first. Maybe they thought of themselves. There was more melancholy in their eyes. "It'll be our turn at this time next year." He Jing, who was lying on the bed, said sadly, "When I saw the seniors leave just now, I felt so sad. I also saw 2 couples leaving hand in hand. Wenzi, do you think they'll be assigned to the same unit?" Her words made Su Wen's heart heavy. She pressed the corners of her mouth and did not answer for a long time. Would she and Song Jiqiu be assigned to the same unit after graduation next year? The probability was basically 0. After washing up, Yiqian pushed the door open and entered. He felt a little sad in the dormitory. Hearing the noise, He Jing asked Yiqian, "Jane Eyre, which unit will you be assigned to after graduation? Is it Senior Xia's unit?" Su One, who was in a bad mood, sighed softly. It's very difficult. I don't really want to talk about this topic. Anyway, it is unlikely that Song Jiqiu and I will be assigned to the same unit. Clang! Clang! There was a sound of impact. Then, Jing held her head and gasped in pain. She, who didn't know anything, was shocked by Su Wen's sudden revelation of her relationship. Her head was still throbbing from the pain, and she said sternly, Wen Zi, you're crazy? Dating at this time? How are you going to maintain a good relationship when you go your separate ways in the future? Why make yourself sad when you only have 1 year to graduate? What he was concerned about wasn't whether or not their relationship would be discovered. Instead, he was concerned that they wouldn't be able to share a piece of land in the future. What's more, they would be separated from each other. Wouldn't that be heartbreaking? Yiqian put away the basin and sat on a small folding stool to dry his hair. He answered He Jing's question. I've been trying my best to get close to Senior Brother Xia. Whether I could be assigned to Senior Brother Xia's unit or not depends on myself. Which unit will Senior Brother Xia be in? Su One, who was moved, asked. The field unit. You know that my goal has always been the field unit. Therefore, the possibility of me being assigned to it is still very high. Yiqian didn't hide anything. He told her the truth. He Jing sighed softly. Then there is still a chance. Jane Eyre, you may be luckier than Wen Zi. Yes, Jane Eyre, you will be luckier than me. Sua nodded. She lacked courage to join the field unit. She could only take one step at a time. Whether she could be assigned to the same unit or not depended on the graduation season next year. Because of the end of the senior year, the 3 girls in the dormitory were a little sad. They said good night hurriedly and went to sleep separately. Chapter 4409. For the past few days of the joint examination, the training grounds of the University of Science and Technology of China were filled with deafening roars. Who knew if it was because of the romance film they had watched that night? But all the students seemed to have been injected with adrenaline, all of them putting their lives on the line to fight for this joint examination. The third-year joint examination was to test the results of the 3 years of military academy training. Through this joint examination, they would be able to see if there were any areas where they were lacking and where they needed to be strengthened. It could be said that the third-year joint examination was all preparation for the fourth-year joint examination. The fourth-year students had already started the final rehearsals for their graduation performance. After the juniors finished their joint examination, it would be time for their graduation performance. After the graduation performance, they would go their separate ways. After that, it would be difficult for them to see each other again. Yiqian completed her joint examination on the first day, using her far superior results to stimulate the students who had not yet completed their joint examination. The students of the same class were still fine. They were stimulated by Yiqian every day and worked hard every day. When the joint examination results came out, the teachers smiled and nodded. The team leader also smiled and nodded. When the results were sent to the faculty, the leaders also smiled and nodded. Not bad. The current class had Yiqian as their pillar of support. No matter how bad their results were, they would still be much better than the worst results of the other classes. As Yiqian was about to enter her fourth year, the team leader had made many requests to the faculty to see if they could let Yiqian stay in school. If she could not stay, they would see if they could let her study until she graduated with a doctorate. In this way, they would be able to motivate countless students to work hard. The team leader's intentions were good, and the faculty also wanted Yiqian to stay in school. However, even the principal could not decide whether Yiqian would stay in school. As such, the team leader brought up the old matter again and was denied again. Old Yao, you should give it a rest. Even if you brought up Yiqian 100 times, she would not stay in school. Give it a rest, give it a rest. The faculty leader saw that the team leader was bringing up the old matter again, and with an agitated expression, he sighed and said helplessly, I also want her to stay in school, but this matter, I'll tell you directly. The higher-ups have already made arrangements. Yiqian really cannot stay in school. Why can't she stay in school? With her talent, she will definitely shine no matter where she goes. And if she stays in school, she can continue to cultivate talents for the country. Similarly, she could do great things. Why can't she stay in school? Her overall qualities are quite good. Even her professors have said that if she really wants to develop her profession with her memory and comprehension, she can choose to study in several science and technology majors. She has achieved good results in the construction of the 2 command information systems that she participated in. Our school should really strive to retain such a talent. We'll be in our senior year soon. We have to fight for it. Only by fighting can we have hope. Upchin. When the department head saw this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't be agitated. Don't be agitated. Calm down, Yao. Don't get so worked up every time Yi Qian's results are out. Don't bring up the application for Yi Qian to stay in school again. In order for Yi Qian to stay in school, the school has already done many things, but it's useless. Old Yao, take a look at Yi Qian's results. Take a good look and think about it. You will understand the direction of Yi Qian's military career in the future. From the moment Yi Qian walked the path of the military, she knew the path she should take and the direction she should go in the future. Therefore, when the team leader asked her about her future plans in the afternoon, Yi Qian did not put up her guard at all. She thought it was just a normal chat. After all, the team leader would often talk to the students. As for Yi Qian, including this time, she had done it 3 times. Chapter 44:10. Just like the previous 2 times, Yi Qian smiled and said, "Field unit, I really want to go. I've always been working hard to get into the field unit and have never given up." Receiving an unexpected answer confirmed his conclusion after looking at all of Yi Qian's physical fitness results over the past 3 years. He wholeheartedly wanted the school to keep this student. She herself had never thought of staying in the school. Her ambition was to join the field unit, and she also yearned to join the field unit. Looking at the student whose eyes were firm and whose heart had never wavered, the cadre felt both gratified and reluctant. Even though he was reluctant, he respected the student's own choice. The field unit is not bad. Even though it will be tough, in front of your overall qualities, any hardship will be crushed. It will not be a problem for you. That's good, that's good. The cadre did not reveal his true intentions. He only wanted to confirm if his guess was correct. Now, Yi Qian had given her answer. With her determination, there was no way she would change her mind. Study hard. There's still 1 year left. Strive to join a field unit that will give you more room for development. Go back to your dorm and rest. In the afternoon, you still have to assist the instructors in the joint examination. Work hard. Yes, sir. Yi Qian watched as the cadre strode away and only returned to her dorm when he was out of sight. After that, until Yi Qian graduated in her 4th year, no other leaders or instructors suggested that Yi Qian stay in the school. Yi Qian also did not know that the school had applied to the military several times to let her stay in the school, and had put in a lot of effort. Luckily, Commander-in-Chief Xia and Major General Yang had stepped in. Otherwise, with the military academy's efforts, Yi Qian would have definitely stayed in the school. Later, when Xia Jinyuan found out, he privately said to Major General Yang, "Luckily, there are people up there. Otherwise, my wife would have run away." Completely unaware that Yi Qian, who had almost stayed in the school, had just finished assisting the instructors in passing the most difficult joint examination in the student's military academy career. The senior year graduation performance was about to begin. On the night of the end of the joint entrance exam, Yi Qian happened to go to the laboratory with a few students to build model. Along the way, they met a few seniors. When they saw Yi Qian, all of them asked Yi Qian to leave a message in their graduation message book. The 2002 graduation notebook was very popular. The graduation notebooks of the 4th year students were all issued by the school in a uniform camouflage color. Faced with several notebooks, Yi Qian was quite frightened. Yi Qian respectfully took the notebook and wrote down his own message seriously. He then looked at his QQ account, which he hadn't logged in for 3 years, and wrote it down as well. "Jianghu is not over yet. We'll meet again." This was the message Yi Qian had left for her senior brothers and sisters. She felt that words of encouragement should not be said by a junior like her. That would be too arrogant. The Jianghu is not over yet. We'll meet again someday. Just as they were about to reach the laboratory, they met a few other senior brothers who were dressed in formal attire and looked particularly handsome. When they saw Yi Qian, two of the senior brothers suddenly nudged one of them. One of them had very handsome features and was holding a book in his hand. He whispered, "Quick, time waits for no man. Seize the opportunity." The footsteps of the senior brother, who was gently pushed out, were somewhat restrained at first. As Yi Jian walked closer and closer to him, the senior brother, whose expression was slightly restrained, coughed softly while covering his fist and then walked toward Yi Jian. With a clear target, it was obvious who he was here for. Moreover, from the way he looked at Yi Qian, it was obvious that something was different this time. Chapter 44:11. A few students in the class pursed their lips and smiled, whispering, "They're here to leave you a message again. There are 5 of them and 5 message albums. Come to the lab after you sign them. We'll leave first. Don't wait for me." Yi Qian would never let the students leave first. It was very awkward for her to talk face-to-face with seniors she didn't know, just like when she received the graduation message albums from her seniors. If it weren't for the fact that the students in the class were standing beside her, she would have pretended not to see them and left. Now that she met them again, she didn't want to let them leave, so she wouldn't feel awkward and uncomfortable. "This is different. Please believe that it's better for you if we leave," a male student said solemnly and looked meaningfully at the handsome senior who was approaching. TSK, TSK, TSK. This senior's looks were definitely on the level of the most handsome male students in the National University of Science and Technology. He was so handsome. "You guys," Yi Qian tried her best to persuade them to stay, but she couldn't stop the students from leaving. They really left Yi Qian alone to face the approaching senior, and left. This time, it was really different. Yi Qian had been confessed to. She had received love letters during her 3 years in the University of Science and Technology, but she had never been confessed to in the way. For a moment, Yi Qian didn't know what to do. In just a few seconds, Yi Qian quickly calmed down and smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, senior. You've entrusted it to the wrong person. I still have an experiment to do. Sorry. I wish senior a bright future and smooth sailing." Then, Yi Qian bowed slightly and left. At the other end of the intersection, there was a slender figure standing behind a tree. His eyes were slightly narrowed as he watched the entire process of the confession and rejection. The school's most handsome senior held the love letter that he had handed out but wasn't accepted. He stood rooted to the ground and didn't come back to his senses for a long time. The other seniors who were with him took turns patting him on the shoulder and sighed. The falling flowers are in love, but the heartless flowing water is heartless. It's not your dish. Don't eat it. If you force yourself to eat it, you might get a stomachache. That's right, that's right. Look, now that you've confessed, at least you won't have any regrets. At least you'll let Junior Yi Qian know that you like her. It's just that she doesn't like you. Think about the other brothers who have a crush on Junior Marshall's sister, Yi Qian. They don't even have the chance to confess. You should be content. The handsome senior brother was originally very sad, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry after being mocked by the brothers beside him. All right, it seems like I've really profited. A bunch of heartless bastards. Do we not have a conscience? Flying snow in June. If we hadn't encouraged you last night to find a chance to confess to Junior Marshall's sister Yi Qian, you would still be secretly in love with her. Speaking of which, I should thank you all. Of course I'm thankful. I bet you'll be the first one to confess to her. Be content, brother. She'll definitely remember you. Go, what's the use of just remembering? You didn't accept me again? But Junior Marshall's sister Yi Qian is quite witty. She said that I've given myself to the wrong person. Don't you all think that's cute? Damn, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But she's quite cute. I always thought that she would be very serious, like an iceberg. I didn't expect her to be so cute. Io, damn, why did you hit me? The senior brother who had failed in his confession ruthlessly gave the brother who spoke a warning. That's right, I hit you. I'm warning you not to have any dirty thoughts. Ha ha, Are you trying to make us laugh to death? You're not even close to her, yet you're protecting her. You're even jealous. Go, go, go. Your confession failed. You have one last important thing to do before leaving school. You can graduate now. Chapter 44:12. The senior who had been rejected by Yi Qian walked a few steps before turning back to take a look. In the dim light of dusk, a slender and graceful figure flashed past the end of the tree, disappearing without leaving a trace. His brothers had said something wrong. Even if he had been the first to confess to her, she would never remember him. To her, he was just a stranger, just a leaf that had accidentally blown past her. Even if it had touched her clothes, even if she had taken a second look, it would not have left a trace. That year, she had held a long sword, her clothes fluttering in the wind. Sometimes the sword moved like a dragon, sometimes graceful and changeable, sometimes fierce and sometimes sad. Just like that, the brightest light in his world had been lit up by her. He had fallen in love with her at first sight without warning. He had graduated, and his crush had ended. Although he had not succeeded, at least he had tried. At least he had not left with the greatest regret. Fine, his brothers were right. He should be satisfied. Yes, brother. Don't tell anyone about what happened just now. If anyone dares to mention anything, they will be punished severely. Io, are you ashamed? Come, come, come. It's not impossible to keep your mouth shut, but you have to give something in return. My allowance has been extorted by you brats, and you still want me to give something in return. Ha ha, you haven't given anything in return. How about using your body to pay for it? F***CKU, the young men who were about to be conferred military ranks and become real military officers left behind their laughter on the familiar campus for the last time. There had been their laughter, their joys and sorrows, and their feelings of loss. Here, they had found their direction through their sweat and tears, and had trained themselves from weak scholars to qualified military officers. Here, they had no regrets in their youth. The love letter containing 5 pages of confession paper was inadvertently placed into the trash can. If nothing unexpected happened, it would be disposed of along with the trash. If nothing unexpected happened, it would be disposed of cleanly. However, something unexpected happened. The young military officers who were about to go to every corner of the motherland left. A pair of leather shoes that had been polished to the point that they were shiny appeared beside the trash can. The owner of the leather shoes had a pair of heaven-defying, slender legs, straight and full of strength. Standing beside the trash can, it gave the illusion that the trash can had become a cannon. The love letter that had not been sent out had already been taken out of the trash can. The envelope was very clean and spotless. However, the corner of the envelope was slightly wrinkled. One look, and one could tell how hard the person had held the love letter. I met you in the 3rd year of high school, and again in the 3rd year. Why must there be trouble every 3rd year? The slightly thick envelope was casually flipped through twice between his slender fingers. A chilling laugh was blown away by the evening breeze, leaving no trace behind. When Yi Jian walked into the laboratory, she received a few winks from her classmates. In an instant, she knew that they must have noticed the difference in the situation, so they went ahead first. Yi Jian glared at them with a smile. Amidst the laughter, Yi Jian shook her head helplessly. She used her fingerprint to unlock the door and pupil verification to walk into the laboratory with several layers of bulletproof glass. If everything went well tonight, she would probably be able to complete the modeling before midnight. If not, she would have to stay up all night. Yi Jian walked into the lab. She had long forgotten about the peach blossoms she had met on the way. She was completely unaffected. With a serious expression, she was fully focused on her studies. Chapter 44:13. Inside the National Science Office building, the dean widened his eyes in surprise at the guy who knocked on the door. What brings you here? Are you going back to your alma mater to give a speech to the graduating juniors? Otherwise, why would he go back to school? Xia Jinyuan walked in with familiarity and refilled the empty teacup. The dean was still in shock. Water, water. My stomach hasn't been well lately, so I need to get rid of the cold. Xia Jinyuan answered. Okay. He picked up the hot water bottle, pulled out the cork, and quickly refilled the empty teacup. He then placed it on the desk, not forgetting to care about the dean who used to be his instructor and was now Yi Qian's dean. You have to take care of your old illness. Don't take it lightly. Don't, young Master Xia. The dean looked at his shoulder and was surprised. Lieutenant Colonel, you've been a major for 10,000 years, but you've been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel. It seems that your superior is being kind. When Xia Jinyuan was still a student and the dean was still an instructor, he was the most troublesome student for the instructor. There was no one like him. He challenged the instructor's fragile nerves every minute, for fear that he would strangle him to death on the training ground one day. The dean took a sip of the hot tea and nodded inwardly for his self-control back then. Fortunately, he restrained himself back then. Otherwise, there would be one less lieutenant colonel. Drink slowly, don't burn yourself. There's still water in the teapot. If it's not enough, I'll go to the water room and fill it up for you. Xia Jinyuan reminded him as he sat down. He looked like a good student who was very concerned about his teacher's health. It would have been better if he didn't say it. Now that he did, the dean would burn himself. Putting the teacup on the desk, the director looked at the guy who had just been promoted a few times and said warily, "One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. I don't feel at ease drinking this tea of yours. Every time this happens, something must be wrong." The dean adjusted his sitting posture as if he was facing a formidable enemy. "Speak, what's the matter? You know me best. You know Yi Qian too. Can you give me at least a month of vacation time this summer?" "Nothing good indeed. No, she has off-campus training this year, so she doesn't have time. Tell me, you brat, are you plotting something? You want to give her a month of 45 days of vacation? What do you want?" That's not right. Something's not right. Why are you always looking for Xiao Yi when you come back?" The director seemed to have thought of a possibility. As he spoke, he slammed his hand on the table and glared at him coldly. He shouted, "Tell me honestly, are you up to no good?" It was really possible. This brat was only good looking from head to toe. Who knows? He might have already used his beauty to seduce comrade Yi Qian. You have a weak stomach, so don't try to scare me. Bullsh asterisk T. You were shocked and tricked, and now you're talking about the stomach. Tell me, what is your true purpose? Xia Jinyuan, if you don't give me a proper explanation today, I will immediately contact the commander-in-chief. He wasn't bluffing. He was serious. Xia Jinyuan said leisurely, "Don't be angry, don't be angry. Do you think I'm a prostitute? What sort of person do you take me for? Am I that bad? Was there a need to kidnap and sell them?" He and Little Fox were clearly in love with each other. Receiving the dean's suspicious and approving gaze, Colonel Xia sighed and said, "I'm only responsible for bringing her to training. If a month isn't enough, then at least 20 days. I can't go any lower. Out-of-campus training is a strenuous and unrewarding task. If you really want to train her, wouldn't it be easier to train her in school?" That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.